It is 3 in the morning. The digital clock on the nightstand glows with a quiet, indifferent red, marking an hour that belongs neither to the night just past, nor to the day yet to come. Outside, the world is draped in a profound silence, a stillness that seems to hold its breath. But inside you, a storm rages. The house is still, your family is asleep, the city is quiet, yet your mind is the loudest place on earth. It's a familiar stage, and the actors are the same ghosts that visit you most nights. There is the ghost of yesterday, replaying a conversation you wish you had handled differently, a mistake you can't undo. There is the ghost of tomorrow, whispering 1,000 worries about the meeting you have to lead, the bills you have to pay, the uncertain future you have to face. And then there is the most relentless ghost of all, the one that holds up a distorted mirror, showing you all the ways you are not enough, all the things you have not achieved, all the people who seem to be living happier, more successful lives on the glowing screens you scroll through during the day. This late-night council of anxieties is a symptom of a modern malady, a deep spiritual friction born from a life of constant pressure, relentless comparison, and the hollow promise of materialism. We are told that peace will come with the next promotion, the bigger house, the perfect relationship, yet the finish line always seems to move further away. And so, the silence of the night no longer brings peace, it only amplifies the inner chaos. But what if this moment, this unwelcome awakening in the deep of the night, is not a curse? What if it is an invitation, an opportunity, away from the distractions of the day, to finally stop running and to simply listen, to turn inward and face the storm, not with resistance, but with curiosity? Thousands of years ago, a man named Siddhartha, a prince who seemingly had everything, found himself haunted by the same fundamental questions about human suffering. His journey was not one of escaping the world, but of understanding the mind. He discovered that the path to peace is not found by changing the world outside, but by transforming our relationship with the world within. The wisdom he unlocked offers a set of tools, a practical guide for navigating the turbulent waters of our own consciousness, for learning how to sit in the darkness and find a light that no external storm can extinguish. This is an invitation to explore that path, to see this midnight stillness not as a prison, but as a classroom for the soul. The storm of the mind that breaks in the silent hours before dawn is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken or that your life has gone uniquely wrong. In fact, this raw, unfiltered experience of anxiety, of dissatisfaction, of a deep and nameless ache is the most honest moment many of us will have all day. When the usual distractions are stripped away, when the roles we play and the masks we wear are set aside on the nightstand, we are left with a fundamental feeling. The ancient language of Pali, the language of the earliest Buddhist teachings, has a word for this feeling. The word is dukkha. This word is the foundation of the Buddha's entire teaching, the first of his 4 noble truths, and it is the very experience you are having at 3 in the morning. To understand the path to peace, we must first understand the landscape of our own unrest, and that begins with a clear-eyed look at dukkha. The word is most often translated into English as suffering, and while it certainly includes suffering, this translation is incomplete. It's too narrow, too dramatic. When we hear suffering, we think of tragedy, intense pain, or deep grief. And yes, dukkha is the agony of losing a loved one. It is the physical pain of a chronic illness. It is the sharp sting of betrayal or failure. This is the most obvious level of dukkha, the kind no one can deny. But if this were all it meant, the teaching would only apply to us in our worst moments. The genius of the Buddha's insight was that dukkha is far more pervasive, more subtle, and more constant than that. It is better understood as a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a persistent friction in the machinery of existence. Think of it like a finely crafted wooden wheel whose axle hole is just slightly off-center. No matter how smooth the road, the ride will always be bumpy. There will always be a subtle, jarring vibration. That vibration is dukkha. It is the pebble in your shoe that you've walked on for so long you've almost forgotten it's there. Yet it prevents you from ever walking with complete ease. To grasp its full scope, we can see dukkha in 3 distinct flavors. The first, as we mentioned, is the dukkha of painful experiences, the obvious suffering. The second is the dukkha of change. This is the unease that comes from the fact that nothing lasts. Even our happiest moments are tinged with the subtle sadness of their own impermanence. You get the promotion you've worked for, and the joy is real, but soon it fades, replaced by the pressure of the new role. You are at a beautiful family gathering, full of laughter and warmth, and a quiet voice in the back of your mind whispers, "This will end. The vacation will be over. The children will grow up. Our youth will fade." This isn't pessimism. It's a simple observation of reality. Our modern world is a machine designed to fight this truth. We desperately try to capture fleeting moments on our phones, to hold on to pleasure, to resist aging, to build a life that is a permanent, stable monument to our happiness. But life is a river, not a monument. By resisting its flow, by trying to grasp the water, we create a tension, a friction, a unique form of suffering. This is the anxiety of knowing that everything we cling to will, sooner or later, change or disappear. The third and most profound flavor is the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the background hum of dissatisfaction that persists even when things are going well. It's the feeling of, "Is this all there is?" that can surface in the middle of a perfectly comfortable life. It's the vague, existential angst that wakes you up in the dead of night. This dukkha arises from the very nature of what we call a self. We are not solid, fixed entities, but rather a complex, ever-changing process of physical and mental components. We are a collection of fleeting thoughts, shifting emotions, physical sensations, and perceptions, all flowing together from moment to moment. Yet we cling to the idea of a permanent, solid me at the center of it all. This clinging to a self that is inherently unstable and transient is the deepest source of our anxiety. It's the off-center axle hole. It's the foundational unsatisfactoriness of a life spent protecting and promoting an entity that is ultimately an illusion. This is why a person can have immense wealth, fame, and success, and still feel an empty ache inside. No amount of external validation can fix the off-center wheel. This was the monumental discovery made by the young Prince Siddhartha, the man who would become the Buddha. He was raised in a palace of pure pleasure, a world meticulously engineered to deny dukkha. His father, the king, decreed that the prince should never witness any sight that might disturb him. He was surrounded by youth, health, and beauty, but this perfect world was a gilded cage. One day, the prince insisted on venturing outside the palace walls. On his trips, despite his father's best efforts, he encountered what are known as the four sights. First, he saw an old man, frail and bent with age. He had never seen such a thing, and his charioteer had to explain that aging is the inescapable fate of all who are born. Then, he saw a sick person, writhing in pain, and learned that the body is fragile and susceptible to disease. Finally, he saw a corpse being carried to cremation, and he was confronted for the first time with the stark reality of death. These three sights were his direct confrontation with dukkha. He saw that the suffering he had been shielded from was not an accident, but the very fabric of human existence. The palace walls, he realized, had not protected him. They had only blinded him. His midnight awakening happened in broad daylight. He recognized that his own life of pleasure was fleeting, a temporary distraction from an undeniable truth. This realization could have led to despair, but then he saw a fourth sight, a wandering ascetic, a holy man who had renounced worldly life. The ascetic was calm, dignified, and peaceful, even in the midst of a world filled with aging, sickness, and death. In that man, Siddhartha saw not a denial of suffering, but a path. He saw that it was possible to confront the reality of dukkha with serenity and wisdom. This is what gave him the courage to leave the palace, to begin his own search for the end of suffering. To look at dukkha, then, is not to be morbid or negative. It is the most courageous and compassionate thing we can do. It is the act of becoming our own honest doctor. Imagine going to a physician with a persistent pain. A bad doctor might dismiss it, tell you it's all in your head, or give you a painkiller that only masks the symptom. A good doctor, however, will examine you carefully, run tests, and give you a precise and honest diagnosis. Only with that correct diagnosis can a true cure be found. The first noble truth is the Buddha's diagnosis. He is not saying life is bad. He is simply holding up a mirror and saying, "This is the nature of our experience. There is an underlying unsatisfactoriness. Let us not pretend it isn't here. Acknowledging this is an act of immense kindness to ourselves. It frees us from the tyranny of should. We no longer have to berate ourselves for not feeling happy all the time. We no longer have to pretend we have it all together. We can finally let go of the exhausting project of maintaining a perfect, trouble-free life, because no such life exists. In the quiet of the night, when the feeling of dukkha arises, we are not failing. We are waking up, just as Siddhartha did. We are being given the same opportunity he was, to see things as they truly are. And this clear seeing, this radical honesty, is not the end of the journey. It is the essential, unavoidable, and liberating first step. Now that we have had the courage to look at the symptom, to name the ache that haunts the midnight hour, the next question arises naturally and urgently. Where does it come from? What is the cause of this fundamental unsatisfactoriness? Having looked with courage into the face of our shared human condition, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness we call dukkha, we are no longer in the dark. We have made the diagnosis. A wise physician, however, does not stop there. The next vital step is to understand the cause, the origin of the disease. The Buddha's second great insight, the second noble truth, does exactly this. It answers the question that echoes in the 3 a.m. silence. Why? Why does my mind race with anxiety? Why do I feel this persistent ache of not enoughness, even when my life is, by all accounts, good? The Buddha's answer is startling in its simplicity and profound in its implications. The cause of dukkha, he said, is a single powerful force within our own minds. The Pali word for it is tanha. Tanha is often translated as desire. But again, like dukkha, this English word is too gentle. Tanha is not the gentle wish for a pleasant afternoon or the wholesome desire for a friend's well-being. Tanha is a thirst. It is a craving, a grasping, a clinging. It has a feverish, compulsive quality. It is the deep, nagging insistence that we need something from the outside world to be whole on the inside. It is the engine that drives our restlessness, the fuel for the fire of dukkha. If dukkha is the feeling of being chronically thirsty, tanha is the mistaken belief that drinking salt water will quench that thirst. It not only fails to satisfy, but it intensifies the very condition we are trying to escape. This thirst, this tanha, manifests in 3 primary ways, and by understanding them, we can begin to see their subtle and powerful influence in every corner of our modern lives. The first and most obvious form is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for things that delight our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. It is the relentless pull toward pleasant sights, sounds, tastes, smells, and physical sensations. Our modern consumer culture is a grand temple built in honor of kama tanha. It whispers to us from every advertisement, every social media feed, every storefront window, promising that happiness is just one purchase away. This is the craving that has you scrolling through online stores late at night, convinced that a new gadget, a new piece of clothing, or a new home accessory will finally fill that nagging void. It's the compulsive reach for the pint of ice cream after a hard day, seeking comfort in sweetness. It is the endless hunt for new entertainment, binge-watching series after series, scrolling through video after video, seeking a constant stream of stimulation to distract us from the quiet discomfort of just being. The problem, the Buddha pointed out, is not the pleasure itself. A beautiful sunset is beautiful. A delicious meal is delicious. The problem is the clinging, the addiction, the desperate belief that these fleeting experiences can provide lasting security and happiness. They can't. The pleasure of the new phone fades. The satisfaction of the meal ends. The entertainment becomes boring. And when it does, the underlying dukkha returns. And the thirst of kama tanha sends us hunting for the next hit. The second, more subtle form of thirst is bhava tanha, the craving for existence and becoming. This is a deeper, more existential craving. It is the thirst to be someone, to solidify our identity, to prove our worth, to carve out a permanent and significant place for ourselves in the world. While kama tanha wants to have something, bhava tanha wants to be something. This is the fuel of ambition. It is the force that drives us to chase titles, status, and recognition, believing that if we can just become vice president, or published author, or successful entrepreneur, the feeling of inadequacy will vanish. It is the deep craving for a stable, admirable identity. In our digital age, this manifests as the careful curation of our online selves. We post our triumphs, our perfect vacations, our flattering angles, all in an effort to construct and defend an identity we want the world to see. We crave the likes, the shares, the positive comments, because they seem to make this fragile identity more real. Bhavatanha is also the root of our deep fear of insignificance and our terror of death. It's the craving to continue, to leave a legacy, to achieve a kind of immortality through our accomplishments or our children. It is the desperate desire for our story to matter, for the I we have worked so hard to build to last forever. The third form is the dark twin of the second, vibhava tanha, the craving for non-existence. If bhavatanya is the pull toward what is pleasant, vibhavatanya is the violent push away from what is painful. It is the craving to annihilate a feeling, a situation, or a person that we find unbearable. This is the energy of aversion, anger, and hatred. When you are stuck in traffic and feel a surge of rage, that is vibhava tanha. You are craving the non-existence of the traffic jam. When you feel shame or embarrassment, the intense desire to disappear, for the ground to swallow you up, is vibhava tanha. In its more common forms, this craving for non-existence fuels all our strategies of numbing and escape. It is the impulse that leads to drinking to forget a painful memory, using drugs to blunt the sharp edges of anxiety, or working obsessively to avoid feeling a deep loneliness. We don't want to experience the dukkha of our lives, so we crave its obliteration. At its most tragic and extreme, vibhava tanha can manifest as self-harm or suicidal thoughts, the ultimate craving to annihilate the self that is perceived as the source of unbearable pain. It is the desperate final attempt to make the suffering stop. To illustrate the nature of this endless thirst, Buddhist cosmology offers the powerful image of the hungry ghost, or preta. These are beings depicted with huge, distended bellies, representing their enormous, insatiable appetites. Yet they have mouths as small as the eye of a needle and necks as thin as a strand of hair. They are perpetually starving and parched, but they can never consume enough to ease their torment. The very act of trying to satisfy their craving is a source of intense frustration and pain. This is a terrifying image, but it is a perfect metaphor for the human mind caught in the grip of tanha. We chase after pleasure, success, and escape, believing that the next thing will finally be the thing that fills us up. But a mind conditioned by craving is a bottomless pit. Satisfying one desire simply creates the space and the energy for the next one to arise. The hungry ghost is not a mythical creature in some distant realm. It is a psychological state that we all inhabit whenever we believe that our peace and happiness depend on getting something from the outside. This is the crucial point of the second noble truth. The cause of our suffering is not the world itself. Money is not the problem. Relationships are not the problem. Pleasure and pain are not the problem. The problem is the craving, the clinging, the grasping in our own minds. The teaching isn't asking us to renounce the world and live a life of bleak austerity. It is asking us to investigate our relationship to the world. It is the difference between savoring a glass of water when you are thirsty and desperately trying to drink the entire ocean. One is a skillful, joyful act. The other is a form of madness, born of an unquenchable thirst. This truth, like the first, is not a message of doom. It is a message of profound empowerment. If the cause of our suffering were external, if it were truly our boss, our partner, the economy, or bad luck, we would be helpless victims, forever at the mercy of forces beyond our control. But the Buddha located the cause squarely within our own hearts and minds. The source of the storm is internal, and because it is internal, we can do something about it. We have agency. We are not simply puppets of fate. We are active, if often unconscious, participants in the creation of our own distress. We are the ones who keep throwing fuel onto the fire. This knowledge is the key that can unlock our prison. It gives us a specific target to work with, a specific process to understand. We have looked at the illness, dukkha, and we have identified its source, tanha. The diagnosis is complete. A great hope now arises. If we know the cause, and that cause is a process within us, could it be possible to stop feeding the fire? Is there a state of being where this feverish thirst is finally quenched? Is there another shore beyond this turbulent river of desire? We have walked into the quiet darkness of the 3 a.m. mind and done two difficult things. We have looked at the illness, the deep and pervasive unsatisfactoriness of dukkha, and we have identified its source, the feverish, compulsive thirst of tanha. To stop here would be to leave us with a stark and perhaps disheartening reality. Our lives are marked by a fundamental unease, and we ourselves are feeding the flames of our own discontent. This is a courageous diagnosis, but a diagnosis without a prognosis, without the possibility of a cure, leads only to despair. It is here that the Buddha's teaching pivots from a profound psychological analysis into a path of radical hope. This pivot is the third noble truth, a truth that shines like a beacon across the turbulent waters of our suffering. It is the simple, revolutionary promise that there is an end to the storm. The Pali word for this is nirodha. It means cessation, ending, extinguishment. The logic is as elegant as it is liberating. If the fire of dukkha is fueled by the logs of tanha, then when the feeding of the fire ceases, the fire itself must cease. If the thirst is the cause of the fever, then when the thirst is quenched, the fever breaks. This is the Buddha's prognosis for the human condition. Recovery is not only possible, it is the natural outcome of removing the cause of the illness. This isn't wishful thinking, it is the cornerstone of the entire path. It transforms the journey from a grim examination of our pain into a hopeful voyage toward freedom. It tells us that the prison of our midnight anxieties has a door, and that the door is not locked. Perhaps no concept in Eastern philosophy has been more misunderstood in the West than this state of cessation, which is more famously known by its synonym, nirvana. The word itself conjures images of a cloudy, ethereal heaven, a paradise one enters after death. Or it is imagined as a terrifying void, a complete annihilation of the self, a bleak state of nothingness. The third noble truth is neither of these things. The Buddha was not a mystic speculating on otherworldly realms. He was an intensely practical teacher, a spiritual physician concerned with ending the suffering of human beings, here and now, in this very life. Nirvana is not a place you go to. It is not a reward for being good. It is a state of mind you can realize. It is a way of being in this world, with all its messiness and beauty, but with a mind that has been fundamentally rewired, freed from the tyranny of its own compulsive reactions. So what is this state like? It is crucial to first understand what it is not. A person who has realized nirvana is not a passionless zombie. They do not become detached from life in an unfeeling, apathetic way. They still feel the warmth of the sun and the cold of the wind. They still experience pleasant and unpleasant sensations. They can still laugh at a good joke and feel sadness when confronted with loss. The difference is not in the initial experience, but in what happens next, or rather, what doesn't happen next. For most of us, when we experience something, a second arrow immediately follows. A painful comment from a colleague isn't just a painful comment. It's the second arrow of rumination, anger, plotting, revenge, and questioning our self-worth that we shoot into ourselves. A moment of pleasure isn't just a moment of pleasure. It's the second arrow of clinging, of fearing its end, of immediately scheming how to get more. In the mind that has realized nirodha, this second arrow is absent. The compulsive habit of elaborating on our experience with craving, aversion, and delusion has been extinguished. The mental commentary, the endless storytelling that fuels our anxiety, has fallen silent. The classic metaphor for nirvana is a fire that has gone out. The word nirvana literally means to extinguish or to be blown out. Imagine your suffering, your anxiety, your restlessness, your insecurity as a raging fire. It's hot, it's agitated, it's consuming. The fuel for this fire, as we know, is tanha. Every time you grasp for a fleeting pleasure, every time you push away a difficult emotion, every time you indulge in self-pity or righteous anger, you are throwing another log onto the fire, keeping it blazing. The path to nirvana is not about aggressively stomping out the fire. You don't fight fire with more agitation. Instead, you simply stop adding fuel. You learn to see the craving as it arises, and you let it be without acting on it. You see the aversion welling up and you observe it, without letting it become hatred. You see the ego wanting to be validated and you smile at it, without feeding it. And what happens to a fire when it is no longer fed? It does not need to be attacked. It simply, gently, and naturally subsides. The embers cool, the smoke clears. What is left is not a black void, but a profound stillness, a spacious peace, a cool clarity that was there all along, obscured by the heat and light of the flames. This is Nirodha. It is not a state you create or achieve. It is the mind's natural, luminous state that is revealed when the fuel of addictive craving has been exhausted. This reveals the critical distinction between the happiness we usually chase and the deep, abiding well-being that Nirodha represents. The happiness we know is conditional. It depends on things going our way. We are happy because we got the promotion, because we are on vacation, because someone praised us. It is wonderful, but it is fragile. As soon as the conditions change, and they always do, happiness evaporates. This conditional happiness is part of the fire. It's a pleasant, smelling log, but it still burns, and when it's gone, we scramble for another. The peace of nirvana is unconditional. It is an inner state of balance, resilience, and profound well-being that does not depend on the shifting sands of external circumstance. It is the peace of the deep ocean, which remains undisturbed regardless of the storms raging on its surface. A mind in this state can experience the waves of joy, sorrow, success, and failure without being thrown off its center. The desperate chase is over. This is the ultimate promise of the Buddha's path. Not a life free from problems, but a mind free from being a problem to itself. It is the end of the war within. The third noble truth is the destination. It is the reason for the journey. We are not just endlessly analyzing our pain for its own sake. We are guided by the knowledge that another way of being is possible. The first truth showed us the shore we are standing on, a shore of constant, subtle unease. The second truth showed us the powerful current of craving that keeps us pinned to this shore. Now, the third truth points across the water to a far shore, a shore of serenity, and it tells us with absolute certainty that shore is real and it can be reached. This vision is the source of all our hope and motivation. It gives us the courage to undertake the difficult work of looking at our own minds. But a vision, no matter how beautiful, is not enough to get us there. A map is useless without a means of travel. We stand on the shore of dukkha, looking across the river of tanha, with the promise of Nirodha beckoning to us from the other side. The question that now arises is the most practical of all. How do we cross? What is the boat, the bridge, the raft that can carry us from the shore of suffering to the shore of serenity? We stand at a pivotal juncture in our inner journey. We have looked unflinchingly at the shore of our own restlessness, the land of dukkha. We have identified the powerful current of tanha, the river of craving that holds us here. And we have seen, with a sense of profound hope, the vision of the other shore, the peaceful land of Nirodha, where the thirst is quenched and the mind is free. The vision is clear, the hope is real, but a vast and turbulent river lies between here and there. To gaze longingly at the other side is not enough. We need a way across. We need a vessel strong enough to withstand the currents of our own conditioning, sturdy enough to carry us through the storms of our own mind. It is here that the Buddha's teaching transitions from diagnosis and prognosis to a direct, practical, and compassionate prescription. This is the fourth noble truth, the path to the cessation of suffering. The Pali word for it is magga. This is the how. This is the raft. This path is not a vague set of suggestions or a call for blind faith. It is a detailed, comprehensive program of self-transformation known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is arguably the most important legacy of the Buddha, a universal guide to human flourishing that has been tested and refined by millions of people over thousands of years. It is called eightfold because it consists of 8 interconnected factors that, when cultivated together, lead the mind out of confusion and into clarity, out of bondage and into freedom. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one after another. To think of it that way is to miss the elegant synergy of the path. Instead, imagine the 8 spokes of a wheel. Each spoke is essential for the wheel's integrity and strength. They all converge at the hub, which represents liberation, and they all support the rim, which allows the wheel to roll smoothly forward. If a spoke is weak or missing, the wheel becomes unstable and the journey falters. In the same way, all 8 factors of the path must be developed in concert, each one supporting and deepening the others. To make this comprehensive system more understandable, the 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential aspects of training: ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. This threefold division provides a clear framework for our inner work. The foundation of the entire structure is ethical conduct, or sila. This group includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Before we can do the subtle, deep work of training the mind, we must first calm the gross disturbances in our daily life. Sila is about how we behave in the world, how we interact with others. It is the practice of living in a way that is harmless and helpful. By cultivating truthful and kind speech, acting with integrity and compassion, and earning a living in a way that doesn't cause harm, we create a life free from the inner turmoil of guilt, remorse, and regret. We stop creating external conflicts that inevitably ripple back into our own minds. This ethical foundation is like preparing the soil before planting a garden. It creates a baseline of inner peace and self-respect that is the necessary ground for the seed of meditation to grow. Once the soil of our life has been enriched through ethical living, we can begin the work of mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the heart of the formal meditative practice. This group includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Here, we turn our attention inward to work directly with the mind itself. Through right effort, we learn the gentle, skillful art of encouraging wholesome states of mind and letting go of unwholesome ones. Through right mindfulness, we develop the anchor of present moment awareness, learning to observe our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without being swept away by them. And through right concentration, we cultivate the ability to unify and steady the mind, allowing it to become calm, clear, and powerful. This stage of the training is like carefully planting the seeds of awareness and diligently watering them, protecting them from the weeds of distraction and the droughts of forgetfulness. The third aspect, which is both the beginning and the end of the path, is wisdom, or panya. This group consists of right view and right intention. Wisdom is the guiding intelligence that illuminates the entire journey. Right view is the clear seeing of reality, as it is understanding the nature of dukkha, its cause, its cessation, and the path itself. It is the map for the journey. Right intention is the compassionate resolve that directs our energy, ensuring that our inner work is motivated by a desire for freedom, kindness, and harmlessness for all beings, including ourselves. Panya is like the seed that contains the blueprint for the entire plant, but it is also the delicious fruit that the mature plant eventually bears. We start with a preliminary level of wisdom to guide our steps, and as we cultivate our conduct, sila, and steady our mind, samadhi, that wisdom deepens and blossoms into a liberating, direct insight that cuts through the roots of our suffering. The Buddha offered a beautiful parable to illustrate the proper attitude toward this path. A man traveling through a dangerous wilderness came upon a vast and treacherous river. The near shore was perilous, but the far shore was safe and serene. There was no bridge and no ferry. Being a resourceful person, the man gathered reeds, sticks, and branches, bound them together with vines, and constructed a simple raft. Relying on the raft, he paddled with all his strength and safely crossed to the other side. Standing on the shore of safety, what should he do? Should he think to himself, "This raft has been of such immense service to me, I would be a fool to leave it behind," and then hoist it onto his shoulders to carry for the rest of his journey? Of course not, the Buddha said. That would be an absurd and heavy burden. A wise person would beach the raft, express their gratitude for its service, and then walk on, unencumbered. The path, the teachings, the practices, these are the raft. They are practical, indispensable tools designed for the specific purpose of crossing from the shore of suffering to the shore of freedom. They are not meant to be turned into rigid dogmas, clung to as a form of identity, or worshipped as an end in themselves. The ultimate liberation is to be free even from the need for the raft that brought you to freedom. This story beautifully underscores the non-dogmatic, pragmatic, and profoundly liberating spirit of the path. This is a path for human beings, not for saints or ascetics in some distant land. It is a practical guide for navigating the challenges of a modern life with its unique pressures and each factor from how you speak to your family and colleagues, to how you earn your living, to the quality of attention you bring to washing the dishes is a direct and applicable tool for cultivating peace. It is a universal framework for living an examined, intentional, and compassionate life, open to anyone of any background who wishes to explore it. And so, the fourth noble truth does not leave us stranded. It provides the way. It lays out a clear, comprehensive, and compassionate path for us to walk. It is a path of integrated development, a journey that heals and harmonizes our actions, our hearts, and our minds. The journey ahead of us now is to walk this path together, to take up each of these 8 branches and examine how we can cultivate them in our own lives. A great journey begins with a clear sense of direction. To build a sturdy raft, we must first have a clear blueprint of the river we need to cross and the shore we are aiming for. The entire structure of the path is guided by wisdom. Therefore, we must begin our detailed exploration there, with the guiding light for the entire journey, the foundation of all true understanding, Chan Keen, or right view. We are now ready to take our first conscious step upon the noble eightfold path, the great raft that carries us from suffering to peace. And this first step, this foundational plank upon which the entire structure rests, is right view. In Pali, it is called samadhyati. It is placed first for a reason. Before we can speak the right words, perform the right actions, or apply the right effort, we must first see clearly. Without right view, we are like a ship without a rudder, a traveler without a compass. Our efforts, no matter how sincere or energetic, will be aimless. We might sail with great speed and determination, only to find ourselves moving in circles, or worse, heading toward even more treacherous waters. Right view is the rudder. It is the compass. It is the map that orients us, that clarifies our destination, and that ensures every other step we take is a step toward liberation. What does it mean to have right view? It is not about adopting the right set of beliefs, memorizing dogma, or being able to win a philosophical argument. Ditui means view, but it's more akin to a perspective, a lens through which we perceive the world. For most of us, most of the time, our lens is clouded and distorted. It is smudged by the fingerprints of our past conditioning, colored by our likes and dislikes, and warped by the incessant demands of our ego. We don't see the world as it is. We see a world that is custom-made for me. We see it through the lens of what we want, what we fear, what confirms our biases, and what threatens our self-image. The storm of anxiety that erupts at 3 in the morning is the direct result of wrong view of mind, perceiving catastrophic futures, replaying past failures, and seeing personal inadequacy instead of simply seeing thoughts and feelings as what they are. Impersonal, fleeting weather patterns passing through the vast sky of awareness. Right view, then, is the patient and courageous work of cleaning our lens. It is the cultivation of a perspective that is aligned not with our preferences, but with the fundamental nature of reality itself. This clear seeing has several essential components. The first, and most foundational, is an understanding of the law of karma, or karma. In the West, karma is often misunderstood as a mystical system of cosmic reward and punishment, or simply as fate. But its original meaning is far more practical and empowering. Karma simply means action, specifically intentional action. The law of karma is the natural law of cause and effect applied to our inner world. It states that our intentional actions, the thoughts we choose to entertain, the words we speak, and the deeds we perform are causes that will have corresponding effects. Wholesome actions, those born from intentions of kindness, generosity, and clarity, are like planting seeds of peace. They naturally lead to wholesome results, a calmer mind, more harmonious relationships, and a sense of inner well-being. Unwholesome actions, those born from intentions of greed, hatred, and confusion, are like planting seeds of poison. They inevitably lead to unwholesome results, agitation, guilt, conflict, and suffering. This isn't a judgment from an external God. It's a natural law, as impersonal as gravity. Understanding this principle is a cornerstone of right view because it returns agency to us. Our happiness is not a matter of luck or the whims of others. It is, to a very large degree, shaped by the quality of our own intentions and actions. The second component of right view is a firm grasp of the very framework we have been exploring, the Four Noble Truths. It means holding in our minds the understanding that there is a fundamental unsatisfactoriness in conditioned existence, dukkha, that this unsatisfactoriness is caused by our own craving and clinging, tanha, that a complete cessation of this unsatisfactoriness is possible, nirodha, and that the way to this cessation is the Noble Eightfold Path, magga. This framework acts as a constant orientation. When we get lost in our practice, when we forget why we are doing this work, we can return to the Four Truths. They remind us of the problem, its cause, its solution, and the method. Holding this view keeps our spiritual journey grounded, focused, and purposeful. The third component is the deepest and most transformative level of right view, an insight into the three characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. These are anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Anicca is impermanence. Right view means seeing directly that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Our bodies are changing. Our feelings arise and pass away. Our thoughts are a ceaseless parade. The seasons change. Mountains rise and fall. Stars are born and die. Seeing this not as a terrifying threat, but as the basic, vibrant dance of life, is right view. It's understanding that trying to hold on to anything is like trying to build a dam in a flowing river. It is the source of immense pressure and inevitable disappointment. Dukkha, as we know, is unsatisfactoriness. In this context, it means seeing that because everything is impermanent, nothing conditioned can provide ultimate, lasting happiness. To rely on anything that changes for our final peace is to build our house on shifting sand. Finally, and most profoundly, there is anatta, or not self. This is the insight that within this ever-changing flow of mind and body, there is no fixed, solid, independent I at the center of it all. What we call our self is more like a dynamic process than a static entity. Seeing this directly is what ultimately liberates the mind. For if there is no solid self, who is it that suffers? Who is it that needs to be defended? This insight cuts the very root of ego clinging. A famous parable illustrates the difference between wrong view and right view. A king once gathered a group of men who had been blind from birth. He had an elephant brought to them and asked each one to describe it. The first man touched the elephant's leg and declared, "An elephant is like a mighty pillar." The second touched the tail and said, "No, it is like a rope." A third felt the tusk and proclaimed it was like a plowshare. A fourth, feeling the ear, insisted an elephant was like a large, leathery fan. Soon, they were all shouting at each other, each one absolutely convinced that their own limited experience was the complete and total truth. The Buddha explained that we are like these blind men. Our ordinary, conditioned perception touches only one small part of reality at a time, and we mistake that part for the whole. We grasp our opinions, our beliefs, and our fleeting experiences and declare them to be the ultimate truth. Right view is the ability to step back and see the whole elephant. It is the wisdom that understands how the leg, the tail, the tusk, and the ear all come together to form a single, complex, and interconnected reality. It is vital to understand that right view is not a call for blind faith. The Buddha was not interested in followers who simply believed what he said. He repeatedly encouraged his listeners to investigate for themselves, to question, and to verify the truth through their own direct experience. The path begins with what we might call learned right view. We listen to the teachings, we read, we contemplate, we consider the ideas of karma, the Four Noble Truths, and the three characteristics, and we decide they make sense. We adopt them as a working hypothesis, a plausible map for our exploration. But the entire purpose of the Eightfold Path is to transform this conceptual understanding into a lived, direct, experiential knowing. Through the practice of mindfulness, we don't just believe in impermanence. We feel the breath coming and going. We watch thoughts arise and vanish, and we know impermanence in our bones. Through the practice of ethical conduct, we don't just accept the law of karma. We see for ourselves how an act of generosity brings joy, and an outburst of anger leaves a bitter residue. Right view is the map, but the rest of the path is the walking that confirms the map is true. Thus, right view is the starting point and the constant guide for our entire journey. It is the light that illuminates the path ahead, preventing us from stumbling into the ditches of nihilism on one side or eternalism on the other. It gives our practice clarity, purpose, and direction. It ensures that our efforts are not wasted and that our hearts are aimed squarely at the goal of liberation. A map, however, is useless if it is merely admired and then folded away. A compass serves no purpose if we don't align our direction of travel with its needle. Once our view, our understanding, is properly oriented, the next logical step is to align the very energy of our heart and mind with that view. We must consciously cultivate the motivation that will propel us across the river. This brings us to the second factor of wisdom, the indispensable partner of right view, Shantudai, or right intention. Having set our course with right view, we possess the map and the compass for our journey. We have a clear, conceptual understanding of where we are going, and why the journey is necessary. But a map, no matter how accurate, provides no momentum. A compass, no matter how true, cannot power the ship. For that, we need an engine. We need fuel. This is the role of the second factor of the wisdom group, the indispensable partner to right view. This is right intention, or samasankappa. If right view is the seeing of the mind, right intention is the aiming of the heart. It is the conscious and deliberate commitment to align our inner life, our thoughts, our motives, our aspirations with the liberating truth we have begun to see. It is the act of turning our ship to face the distant shore and engaging the engine with compassionate resolve. Sankappa is a rich word, often translated as intention, resolve, aspiration, or even the thought that has been well considered. It is the quality and texture of our inner world, the steering wheel that directs our mental energy before it ever manifests as speech or action. Our ordinary, untrained intentions are often rooted in what Buddhism calls the three unwholesome roots: greed, hatred, and delusion. The mind, left to its own devices, generates intentions driven by, I want this, I hate that, and I don't understand this. The anxious thoughts that spiral in the pre-dawn darkness are fueled by these very intentions. The intention to grasp at a secure future, the intention to push away the fear of failure, and the intention born of confusion about where true happiness lies. Right intention is the radical act of systematically replacing these unwholesome roots with their wholesome opposites. It is the deliberate cultivation of intentions based not on grasping, aversion, and confusion, but on letting go, on kindness, and on clarity. The Buddha spoke of three specific kinds of right intention that we must cultivate. The first is the intention of renunciation. The word renunciation can sound severe, conjuring images of self-denial and a bleak, joyless existence. This is a profound misunderstanding. The Pali word, nekkhamma, is better understood as the intention of letting go. It is not about renouncing the world, but renouncing the craving, tanha, that makes us suffer in the world. It is the inner resolve to seek happiness not in the endless, exhausting pursuit of satisfying our desires, but in the peace and freedom that come from releasing our grip. In a modern context, this is not about selling all your possessions. It is about renouncing your addiction to them. It is not about throwing away your phone, but about letting go of the compulsive need to check it every 30 seconds for a hit of validation. It is not about avoiding delicious food, but about renouncing the habit of using food as a drug to numb your emotions. The intention of renunciation is a fundamental shift in perspective, moving from the desperate question of, what more can I get to make me happy, to the liberating question of, what can I let go of to find peace? It is the intention to find contentment within, rather than constantly seeking it from without. It is the whisper that says, less is more. The second is the intention of goodwill, or abhyapada. This is the intention free from all ill will, anger, aversion, and hatred. It is the active cultivation of what is known as metta, or loving kindness. This is the genuine wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception. This intention is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of anger and resentment that contaminates so much of our inner life. When another driver cuts you off in traffic and your mind floods with rage, the practice of right intention is to recognize that rage and consciously replace it with a simple wish. May you be safe. May you get to your destination without harm. This feels artificial, even impossible at first, but it is a muscle we can train. It is the intention to see the humanity in those with whom we disagree, to remember that they, too, are seeking happiness and avoiding suffering, even if their methods seem misguided to us. Most importantly, the intention of goodwill must be directed toward ourselves. For many of us, the most vicious and relentless voice we hear is that of our own inner critic. Right intention is the practice of replacing that voice of harsh self-judgment with a voice of forgiveness, acceptance, and self-compassion. It is the foundational wish: may I be happy, may I be at peace. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the intention free from cruelty, aggression, and violence. It is the active expression of compassion, or karuna. While goodwill is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. It is the heart's tender vibration in response to pain, whether our own or another's. This intention of harmlessness, of course, includes the obvious commitment not to cause physical harm. But its scope is far broader. It is the intention not to harm with our words, restraining ourselves from gossip, slander, and harsh speech that can wound more deeply than any physical blow. It is the intention to be harmless in our consumption, making choices that minimize our negative impact on the environment and other living creatures. It is the active motivation to alleviate suffering where we find it, whether that means offering a listening ear to a friend in distress or contributing in our own way to solving larger social problems. It is the gentle, protective instinct of the heart that sees all of life as precious and recoils from causing it pain. There is a beautiful and widely told story from the Cherokee tradition that perfectly illustrates the practice of right intention. An elder is teaching his grandson, and he says, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, lies, and ego. The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, compassion, and truth. This same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too." The grandson considers this for a moment and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The old man simply replies, "The one you feed." This is the essence of right intention. Our mind is this inner ground where these two wolves live. Our habitual, reactive thoughts of anger, jealousy, and fear are the evil wolf. We have fed him for a very long time, and he has grown strong and demanding. The practice of right intention is the conscious, moment-by-moment choice to stop feeding this wolf. We don't have to kill him. We can't simply eradicate our capacity for these emotions, but we can choose to systematically weaken him by withdrawing our attention. At the same time, we actively nourish the good wolf. We deliberately feed him with thoughts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. Every time we replace a resentful thought with a kind one, we are feeding the good wolf. Every time we choose to let go of a craving, we are feeding the good wolf. Every time we meet our own pain with compassion instead of judgment, we are feeding the good wolf. Over time, as we consistently feed him, he grows stronger, and his voice becomes the dominant one in our minds. Right intention, then, is not a passive state, but an active, moment-to-moment practice of mental cultivation. It begins with the mindfulness to recognize the quality of our thoughts as they arise. We notice, there is a thought of ill will. We then apply right view, understanding that this thought, if followed, will lead to suffering. Then, we apply right intention, gently letting go of that thought and, if possible, replacing it with its wholesome opposite. This process of inner gardening, of patiently pulling the weeds of unwholesome thoughts and planting the seeds of wholesome ones, is how we gradually resculpt the landscape of our own heart. Right view gives us the architectural plan for a beautiful garden, but right intention is the daily, loving labor of tending to it. It is what infuses the entire path with warmth and purpose, ensuring our journey is not a cold, sterile, intellectual project, but a genuine and heartfelt transformation. It is the whisper that steers our life toward the light. When our view is clear and our intention is pure, this inner alignment cannot be contained. It naturally seeks to express itself, to overflow into the world around us. And the first, most powerful, and most immediate way our inner state is made manifest is through the portal of the mouth. A mind dedicated to letting go, to goodwill, and to harmlessness cannot for long continue to speak with words of grasping, ill will, and cruelty. This brings us to the next step on our path, the beginning of the great training in ethical conduct, Chan Ing, or right speech. Having oriented our journey with right view and fueled it with the compassionate energy of right intention, we now arrive at the first expression of our inner work in the outer world. We arrive at the beginning of Sila, or ethical conduct. This is where our practice leaves the silent, internal realm of thought and begins to shape our tangible reality. And the most frequent, powerful, and immediate way our inner state becomes manifest is through our speech. This is the third step of the path, right speech, or samavacha. Our words are the audible vibrations of our mind. They are the bridge between our private consciousness and our shared social world. A mind filled with the thorns of ill will and confusion will speak with thorns. A mind cultivated with kindness and clarity will speak with flowers. Right speech is the art of tending the garden of our language, ensuring that what grows there brings nourishment, not poison, to ourselves and to others. The practice of right speech is far more nuanced and profound than the simple injunction to tell the truth. It is a comprehensive training in using language as a tool for healing and connection, rather than a weapon of division and harm. It asks us to become mindful curators of the sounds we send out into the world. In the Buddhist tradition, this practice is broken down into 4 key aspects, 4 kinds of speech to abstain from. By understanding what to avoid, we learn what to cultivate. The first, and the foundation of all trustworthy communication, is abstaining from false speech. This means more than simply not telling outright lies. It is a commitment to reality. It means refusing to consciously distort the truth for personal gain, to avoid embarrassment, or to manipulate others. This includes the subtle forms of dishonesty we so often engage in: exaggeration to make a story more impressive, downplaying facts to escape responsibility, making promises we have no intention of keeping, or using deceptive silence to allow a falsehood to be believed. Why is this so critical? Because truthfulness is the bedrock of integrity. When our inner reality and our spoken words are aligned, we experience a profound sense of inner peace. There is no longer a stressful gap to manage, no fear of being discovered, no mental energy wasted on maintaining a fabrication. Lying, even in small ways, creates a constant, low-grade dukkha. It is the anxiety of the inner world being at war with the outer. To commit to truthful speech is to commit to a life of inner-outer harmony, building trust not only with others, but most importantly, with ourselves. The second element is abstaining from divisive or slanderous speech. This is the act of using words to set one person or group against another. It is carrying tales, taking a story you heard from one person and repeating it to another to create discord. It is speaking ill of an absent person to poison a listener's opinion of them. In our modern world, this practice is rampant. It is the lifeblood of toxic office politics, the fuel for gossip that ripples through social circles, and the dark heart of so much online activity, from spreading rumors to engaging in public shaming. The intention behind divisive speech is almost always unwholesome. It is an attempt to elevate our own status by diminishing someone else, to forge a bond with one person based on a shared dislike of another, or simply to create drama out of a sense of boredom or malice. The practice of right speech calls us to be a force for reconciliation. It is the resolve not to be a carrier of discord. It means that when we hear a negative story, we allow it to stop with us. Instead of fanning the flames of conflict, we use our words to build bridges of understanding and to highlight the good in others. The third aspect is abstaining from harsh or abusive speech. These are words used as weapons, words intended to cause pain. This includes the obvious forms like shouting, cursing at someone, and overt verbal abuse. But it also includes the more subtle forms of verbal violence, biting sarcasm, belittling comments disguised as jokes, condescending tones, and constant criticism. Harsh speech is the sound of an angry mind. It arises from the unwholesome root of aversion, the desire to attack or push away something or someone we find displeasing. You can feel the violence of it in your own body when you speak with rage. Your muscles tense, your heart rate increases, your mind becomes clouded. The practice here is to cultivate its opposite, gentle speech. It is learning to speak to others with kindness and respect, even and especially when we disagree. It is learning to express our own needs, our disappointments, and our anger in a way that is clear and firm. but not attacking. The Buddha advised to use words that are pleasing to the ear and go to the heart. Gentle speech has the power to disarm anger, to soothe fear, and to create an atmosphere of safety where true communication can happen. The fourth and final element of right speech is abstaining from idle chatter. This is often the most challenging practice for us in a world that fears silence. Idle chatter is pointless talk, speech that serves no real purpose. It is filling the air with noise simply for the sake of it. It's aimless gossip about celebrities, complaining about the weather for the 10th time, or indulging in endless speculation about things we cannot know or control. Why is this considered unwholesome? Because it agitates and dissipates our mental energy. A mind that is constantly engaged in superficial external chatter is a mind that cannot settle. It is a mind that is always skittering along the surface of things, afraid to rest in the deeper waters of silence and contemplation. Right speech here doesn't mean we must become grimly silent and only discuss philosophy. It means we should value our words and the attention of others. We should aim to speak with purpose. Is what I am about to say true, kind, and beneficial? Is it necessary? If not, perhaps the most skillful action is to embrace the gift of shared, peaceful silence. Cultivating this skill externally helps to quiet the endless, useless chatter of our own inner monologue. And this is where the practice of right speech becomes a profound tool for inner transformation. The most important speech we engage in every day is our internal self-talk. We can apply these 4 principles directly to the voice inside our own head. Are we lying to ourselves, living in denial about a problem? Are we creating inner division, with one part of ourselves hating another part? Are we speaking harshly to ourselves, berating ourselves for every mistake, with a torrent of abuse from our inner critic? Is our mind filled with an endless stream of useless, anxious, idle chatter? By practicing right speech with others, we begin to purify this inner monologue. And as our inner monologue becomes more truthful, more unified, more gentle, and more purposeful, our outer speech naturally follows. The Buddha used a powerful simile to drive home the immediate consequence of our words. He said that a person who speaks with a mind of hate is like someone who picks up a burning hot coal from a fire with the intention of throwing it at their enemy. Who gets burned first? Is it the intended target? Number. The one who picks up the hot coal is the one who is immediately seared by it. In the same way, before our harsh words ever reach the ears of another to cause them pain, our own mind is burned by the very anger, hatred, and agitation that was required to create those words. The act of forming the malicious intention and speaking the cruel word is, first and foremost, an act of immediate self-harm. It poisons our own heart long before it ever poisons the air between us and another. Right speech, then, is a deeply compassionate practice for ourselves and for others. It asks us to recognize the immense power that resides in our tongue and to wield that power with wisdom and care. Our words can be the cause of immense suffering, creating division, pain, and confusion. Or they can be a profound force for good, creating connection, healing, trust, and clarity. By choosing our words mindfully, we are not simply being polite or nice. We are actively shaping our world, moment by moment, into a more peaceful and harmonious place. We are aligning our conduct with our deepest intentions. And this integrity, this harmony between our heart and our words, naturally seeks to express itself in an even broader way. Having aligned our view, our intention, and our speech, the path now calls us to harmonize our physical deeds with this same clarity. This leads us directly to the next factor in our training in ethical conduct, Chan Eep, or right action. Our journey along the path of ethical conduct, or Sila, now moves from the realm of words to the realm of deeds. Having trained ourselves to use language as a tool for healing and connection through right speech, we now turn to the purification of our physical conduct through the 4th step of the path, right action, or samakamanta. Our actions are the most tangible footprints we leave on the world. They are the undeniable evidence of our inner state, the physical embodiment of our intentions. If our mind is a garden, our actions are the fruit that it bears for the world to see. The practice of right action is the conscious cultivation of a life whose deeds are in perfect harmony with a wise view and a compassionate heart, ensuring that our presence in the world is a source of safety and peace. not one of harm and distress. Like right speech, the practice of right action is traditionally defined by what we refrain from. The Buddha laid out 3 fundamental areas of physical conduct to be purified. These are not arbitrary rules handed down from on high, but practical, psychological guidelines designed to create a life free from the inner poisons of remorse, guilt, and fear. They are the essential guardrails that keep us from veering into actions that will inevitably cause suffering for others and, most certainly, for ourselves. The first principle of right action is to abstain from taking life. In its most direct sense, this is a commitment to not intentionally kill any living creature. It is born from the compassionate insight of right intention, the recognition that all beings, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, share a fundamental desire to live and a deep-seated aversion to being harmed. This principle asks us to cultivate a reverence for life in all its magnificent forms. But in our complex, interconnected modern world, the spirit of this precept extends far beyond the direct act of killing. It calls us to examine the consequences of all our actions on the web of life. It becomes a powerful call for environmental responsibility. Our patterns of consumption, the waste we generate, and the industries we support all have a direct impact on ecosystems and the well-being of countless species. To practice right action is to act as a steward, not a conqueror, of the natural world. It also, of course, means abstaining from all forms of physical violence and abuse against our fellow human beings. Furthermore, we can turn this principle inward. Are we taking our own life, slowly but surely, through actions of self-neglect or abuse? Consuming things that we know damage our body, depriving ourselves of sleep, or living under a weight of chronic stress are all forms of violence against ourselves. Right action, then, is also the compassionate act of caring for the precious vehicle of this body, preserving its vitality so that we can continue on the path. The second principle is to abstain from taking what is not given. At its core, this means not stealing. It is a commitment to respecting the property of others and the fruits of their labor. But again, the spirit of this precept reaches far beyond simple theft. In our world, taking what is not freely given can take many subtle forms. It can mean cheating on our taxes, thereby taking from the community. It can mean plagiarizing another's work, or illegally downloading music and films, taking the fruit of an artist's creativity without acknowledgement or compensation. In the workplace, it can mean taking credit for a colleague's idea, or not doing our fair share of the work while accepting a full share of the pay. Each of these actions, no matter how small, creates a subtle dissonance in the mind. It erodes our own sense of integrity. The wholesome opposite of taking is, of course, giving. The practice of right action, therefore, isn't just about refraining from stealing. It is about actively cultivating a spirit of generosity, or dana. It is the joy of offering our time, our energy, our resources, and our kindness without expecting anything in return. It is the great mental shift from a life organized around the question, "What can I get?" to a life guided by the question, "What can I offer?" The third principle is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood precepts. It is not a condemnation of sexuality itself, but a call to bring mindfulness, respect, and harmlessness into our intimate relationships. For a lay practitioner, this traditionally meant refraining from adultery and any sexual act based on exploitation, coercion, or deception. It is about not causing harm to others, their relationships, or their families through our own sexual desires. In a modern context, its essence is about respecting the dignity, autonomy, and emotional well-being of others. It means ensuring that consent is not just present, but clear, enthusiastic, and ongoing. It means being honest with our partners and refusing to use manipulation or deception to get what we want. It is the commitment to not treat another human being as a mere object for our gratification, but to honor them as a whole person with their own feelings and sensitivities. This principle also invites us to be mindful of our consumption of sexually explicit material, asking whether it is rooted in exploitation or violence, and how it shapes our own attitudes and intentions toward real people. Fundamentally, right action in this area is about cultivating a sexual energy that is rooted in mutual respect, genuine connection, and deep care, rather than simple, selfish craving. The ultimate purpose of these three practices is profoundly psychological. The goal is to build a life of unimpeachable integrity, and the fruit of such a life is a mind at peace. When we know, deep in our bones, that our actions are not causing harm, our minds are not plagued by the ghosts of past misdeeds, there is no need for the exhausting mental gymnastics of justification, rationalization, and denial. There is no fear of being discovered. There is no nagging guilt that surfaces in quiet moments. A life of right action leads to what the texts call the bliss of blamelessness. This inner peace, this freedom from remorse, is not a small thing. It is the fertile ground upon which deeper states of concentration and insight can grow. It is impossible to calm the mind in meditation when it is being constantly disturbed by the memory of our own harmful actions. In this way, the ethical training of Sila provides the essential and indispensable foundation for the meditative training of Samadhi. The story of Ambapali, a famous courtesan in the time of the Buddha, is a beautiful illustration of how a change in view can lead to a radical change in action. Ambapali was intelligent, beautiful, and wealthy, living a life centered around sensual pleasure and the commerce that came with it. Her actions were driven by the norms of her profession. Upon hearing of the Buddha's wisdom, she went to listen to him teach. The teachings on the nature of reality, on impermanence and the roots of suffering, touched her so deeply that her entire perspective shifted. This inner shift immediately manifested as right action. She invited the Buddha and his community of monks for a meal, a great honor. After the meal, in an act of profound generosity and transformation, she stood before the assembly and donated her magnificent mango grove, a primary source of her wealth and the setting for her business, to the Buddha's community to be used as a monastery. Her actions were no longer aimed at securing sensual pleasure or wealth, but at supporting the path to liberation for all. Her story is a powerful reminder that our past actions do not define our future potential. At any moment, through the cultivation of right view and right intention, we can begin to walk the path of right action. In essence, right action is the practice of making our physical presence on this earth a blessing, not a burden. It is compassion in motion. It is wisdom embodied. By acting with a deep care for all life, with respect for the belongings and creativity of others, and with profound integrity in our relationships, we create a more peaceful world around us. And in doing so, we create the most precious thing of all, a peaceful and fearless home within our own heart. For most of us, the majority of our waking hours, and therefore the majority of our actions, are bound up with how we make a living. Our work is where our skills, our energy, and our time are offered to the world. Therefore, the principles of right action, of harmlessness and integrity must naturally extend to this most central part of our lives. This brings us to the final and perhaps most challenging factor in our training in ethical conduct, Shanmang, or right livelihood. We have now walked through the first two pillars of ethical conduct, or Sila. We have explored the power of right speech to create harmony and the integrity of right action to build a life of blamelessness. Now, we arrive at the third and final pillar of this foundational training, the one that integrates our ethics into the very fabric of our daily existence. The fifth step of the path, right livelihood, or samajiva. For most of us, our work is not a small part of our lives. It is the activity to which we dedicate the majority of our waking hours, our most potent energies, and our sharpest focus. It is how we sustain ourselves and our families. Because it is so central, our livelihood can either be a constant source of inner conflict and negative karma, or it can be a powerful and integrated part of our spiritual path. Right livelihood asks us to look honestly at this enormous part of our life and ask the profound question: is the way I earn my living a cause for harm or a cause for healing in this world? The principle of right livelihood is a natural extension of right action. It is the commitment to earn a living in a profession that does not, by its very nature, violate the core principles of harmlessness and integrity. To spend 8 hours a day engaged in work that causes suffering creates a deep and painful division in our psyche. It becomes impossible to cultivate a peaceful heart in the evening if we have spent the day causing harm, whether directly or indirectly. The Buddha, with his practical understanding of human life, explicitly advised his lay followers to avoid 5 specific types of businesses, as they are fundamentally incompatible with a path of compassion and wisdom. First, he advised against dealing in weapons. The reason is clear. This livelihood profits directly from the instruments of violence, injury, and death. To trade in weapons is to trade in the potential for suffering on a massive scale. Second, he spoke against dealing in living beings. In his time, this referred primarily to the slave trade and the business of raising and selling animals for slaughter. The principle is one of avoiding the commodification of life, of not profiting from the bondage or death of other beings. Third, he specifically mentioned dealing in meat, which is the business of animal butchery itself. This is a direct participation in the act of taking life. Fourth, he advised against dealing in intoxicants. This refers to selling alcohol or other substances that lead to heedlessness, addiction, and the loss of self-control. The principle is to avoid profiting from that which clouds the minds of others and causes them to act in unskillful and harmful ways. Finally, he advised against dealing in poisons, which is any business that profits from substances designed to harm or to kill. In our 21st century global economy, these 5 categories may seem archaic, but the ethical principles behind them are more relevant than ever. Most of us are not arms dealers or slave traders, but the spirit of right livelihood demands that we look deeper. We must ask how these principles apply to our own complex professions. The core inquiry is one of harmlessness. Does my work, even indirectly, exploit people? This could mean working for a company that relies on unethical labor practices overseas, or one that preys on the financially vulnerable. Does my work cause significant harm to the environment, thus harming the habitat of countless beings, human and non-human? Does my livelihood depend on deception, such as a career in manipulative advertising or public relations that knowingly misleads the public? Does my work promote the modern equivalent of intoxicant heedlessness and addiction? One could argue that designing addictive gambling apps or social media algorithms that thrive on outrage and short attention spans falls into this category. The practice of right livelihood is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to see our own role in complex systems. But right livelihood is not just about avoiding the negative. It also has a beautiful, positive dimension. It is the aspiration to find or create work that is actively beneficial, work that contributes to the well-being of society. It is a career that allows us to express our deepest values of compassion and wisdom. This could be in the healing professions, like a doctor or therapist. It could be in education, as a teacher shaping young minds. It could be in the arts, creating beauty that uplifts the human spirit. It could be in sustainable agriculture, caring for the earth while nourishing people. It could be in ethical business, creating a workplace that is fair, respectful, and supportive. The possibilities are endless. The goal is to find a way to offer our unique gifts to the world that feels meaningful and causes our heart to be at peace. Let us be compassionate with ourselves here. In the real world, not everyone has the economic freedom to simply quit a job and find a new one that perfectly aligns with these high ideals. We have responsibilities, families to support, and bills to pay. The path is not about creating more anxiety and guilt. If your current work is not one of the obviously harmful professions, the practice of right livelihood can shift from what you do to how you do it. You can be an island of integrity in any workplace. You can commit to practicing right speech with your colleagues, your customers, and your boss. You can practice right action by being diligent, honest, and refusing to cut corners. You can practice right intention by dedicating the energy of your work not just to getting a paycheck, but to the well-being of your family and to serving society in your own small way. You can be the person in the office who is known for their kindness, their calm, and their integrity. In this way, even a neutral job can become a profound practice of right livelihood. We can think of our livelihood as a garden that we tend every day. If our profession is one of the 5 harmful trades, it is like we have chosen to plant a garden of poison ivy and nightshade. No matter how neatly we arrange the rows, the garden itself is toxic, and its fruits will be suffering. If we have a neutral profession, like most forms of office work or skilled labor, the garden plot is fertile but empty. The quality of our work, then, depends entirely on what we choose to plant. We can fill it with the weeds of office, gossip, laziness, and petty dishonesty, or we can choose to cultivate the flowers of diligence, cooperation, kindness, and integrity. The choice is ours each day. And if we are fortunate enough to have a job that is inherently helpful and healing, it is as if we have been made the caretaker of a beautiful orchard filled with fruit trees and medicinal herbs. Our joyful task is simply to tend this garden with care, to protect it from blight, and to share its wholesome bounty with the world. With the cultivation of right livelihood, our training in ethical conduct is complete. We have built a life of integrity from the ground up, aligning our speech, our actions, and our work with the principles of wisdom and compassion. This creates a powerful sense of inner coherence and self-respect. We are no longer at war with ourselves, with our spiritual values pointing one way and our daily life going another. This unified, blameless life is the stable foundation upon which the deeper meditative practices can be built. We have prepared the soil. We have calmed the most significant external disturbances that can agitate the mind. Now, with this foundation of Sila firmly in place, we are ready to turn our attention fully inward. We move from the outer world of our conduct to the inner world of consciousness itself. This brings us to the next great division of the path, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. And this deeper work begins with the fifth factor of the path, the gentle but persistent application of Chan Tin Tun, or right effort. With the firm foundation of ethical conduct, or Sila, securely in place, our outer life is now oriented toward peace. We have built a container of integrity through our words, our actions, and our livelihood. This container minimizes the coarse, external agitations that disturb the mind, creating the possibility for a deeper stillness. Now, we turn our gaze inward. We step into the heart of the Buddha's path of transformation, the training of the mind itself, known as samadhi. This inner work requires energy, but a very specific kind of energy. This brings us to the sixth factor of the path, the engine of our meditative practice, right effort, or samavayama. When we hear the word effort in the West, our minds often jump to images of striving, of struggle, of gritting our teeth and pushing through pain. We are taught no pain, no gain. In the context of spiritual practice, this kind of tense, forceful effort is not right effort. It is, in fact, a hindrance. It creates more agitation and leads to burnout. The Pali word vayama implies something much more skillful and intelligent. It suggests a sustained, steady, and wise application of our vital energy. It is not the violent energy of a tidal wave crashing against the shore, but the gentle, persistent, and powerful energy of a deep river current flowing steadily toward the sea. Right effort is the art of learning to guide this current of our energy with wisdom and grace. This skillful application of energy is traditionally broken down into a beautifully simple and comprehensive framework known as the Four Great Efforts. This framework is our practical guide to becoming a wise and compassionate gardener of our own mind. The first of these is the effort to prevent. This is the proactive, preventative medicine for the mind. It is the effort to prevent unwholesome, unskillful states such as thoughts of greed, anger, jealousy, or despair from arising in the very first place. This is accomplished through the practice of what is called guarding the sense doors. Our mind is constantly being fed information through our six senses: our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind itself, which perceives thoughts. The effort to prevent is the conscious choice to be mindful of what we allow in. If you know that endlessly scrolling through a particular social media feed consistently triggers feelings of envy and inadequacy, the effort to prevent is the wise choice to put the phone down. If you know that listening to angry talk radio or getting into political arguments online always leaves you feeling agitated and resentful, the effort to prevent is to consciously turn away and protect your peace. This is not about hiding from the world, but about recognizing our own triggers and wisely regulating the input we feed our mind. It is the equivalent of building a sturdy fence around our mental garden to keep out the most common pests. Of course, no matter how good our fence is, weeds will sometimes sprout. This brings us to the second practice, the effort to abandon. This is the effort to let go of an unwholesome state that has already arisen in the mind. A sudden memory triggers a wave of anger. An advertisement sparks a strong feeling of desire. A critical comment from our boss sends us into a spiral of anxiety. The unskillful reaction is either to indulge the feeling, letting it grow stronger, or to try and violently suppress it, which often just gives it more power. The skillful effort to abandon is much gentler. The first step is simple recognition through mindfulness. Ah, anger is present. Desire has arisen. Just this naming and acknowledging can rob the state of its unconscious power. Then, we can apply various tools. We can investigate the thought, why am I feeling this? Is this useful? We can consciously replace it with its wholesome opposite, such as meeting the anger with a deliberate thought of loving kindness. Or, we can simply withdraw our attention from the unwholesome thought, refusing to feed it with more energy, and gently return our focus to a neutral anchor, like the sensation of our breath. The weed, deprived of the sunlight of our attention, will eventually wither and die on its own. This is the active, moment-to-moment weeding of our inner garden. The third practice shifts us from the defensive to the creative, the effort to cultivate or arouse. This is the joyful work of planting new seeds. It is the deliberate effort to give rise to wholesome, skillful states of mind that are not yet present. These are the qualities we want to grow in our garden. States like loving, kindness, compassion, generosity, focus, tranquility, and joy. We don't just wait for them to appear by chance. We actively cultivate them. We can set aside time for a formal meditation on loving kindness, systematically sending warm wishes to ourselves and others. We can reflect on a time we acted with generosity and allow the good feeling to permeate our mind. We can read an inspiring text, listen to uplifting music, or consciously appreciate the simple beauty of a flower. This is the proactive, joyful work of seeding our mind with the qualities we wish to see flourish. Finally, once a wholesome state has taken root, we apply the fourth practice, the effort to maintain and develop. When, through our practice, a moment of genuine peace arises, or a feeling of deep compassion emerges, or our mind becomes unusually clear and focused, our work is to nurture this fragile seedling. The unskillful reaction is to get excited and grasp at it, shouting, "Wow, peace, I must hold on to this." This grasping, born of desire, is the surest way to kill the very peace we are trying to hold. The skillful effort to maintain is much more delicate. It is to gently rest our attention on the wholesome state, to savor it, to protect it from distraction. We observe it with interest. What conditions allowed this peace to arise? How does it feel in the body? By giving it this gentle, sustained attention, we allow it to deepen and stabilize. This is the equivalent of carefully watering our new plant, making sure it has enough sunlight and protecting it from being trampled. Over time, with this patient nurturing, the seedling grows into a strong and healthy plant that bears the fruit of lasting well-being. The perfect illustration of the quality of this effort is the story of a monk named Sona Kolavisa. Sona was a man of immense diligence and had been raised in luxury, with famously soft and delicate feet. When he ordained as a monk, he practiced with extreme, almost violent effort. He engaged in walking meditation day and night, so relentlessly that the path became stained with blood from his torn feet. Yet, despite this heroic striving, his mind was not liberated. He only felt pain and exhaustion. Discouraged, he thought to himself, "I am giving everything, and it is not working. Perhaps this path is not for me." The Buddha, perceiving his thoughts, visited him. "Sona," he said, "I understand that before you became a monk, you were a master at playing the lute." "That is true, Lord," Sona replied. The Buddha asked, "Tell me, what happened when you tuned the strings of your lute too tightly?" Sona answered, "The sound was sharp and unpleasant, and the strings were liable to snap." "And what happened when the strings were too loose?" The Buddha continued, "The sound was dull and flat, and it was impossible to make music." "And when?" the Buddha asked. "Were the strings tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose?" "Then, Lord," Sona said with a smile, "the lute produced a beautiful, resonant, and harmonious sound." The Buddha looked at him with kindness. "In the same way, Sona, effort that is too strained and tense leads to restlessness and agitation, and effort that is too lax and lazy leads to dullness and sloth. Tune the energy of your practice like you tune the strings of your lute. Find the balance, the middle way, and point your mind toward that harmony. This is the very essence of right effort. It is the art of tuning our own instrument. It is a practice infused with kindness and patience. The inner gardener must be a gentle one, not a harsh perfectionist. We will get distracted, Unwholesome thoughts will continue to arise for a long time. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply the nature of an untrained mind. The practice is not about achieving a perfect, weed-free garden overnight. The practice is in the gentle, persistent, and compassionate act of returning. Each time we notice we have wandered and gently guide our attention back, that is a moment of successful right effort. This wise and balanced management of our energy is the engine of our inner transformation. It is the skillful art of knowing what to cultivate and what to release, when to apply energy and when to relax. Through these four great efforts, we gradually become the master gardeners of our own minds, creating an inner landscape that is less cluttered with the suffocating weeds of negativity and more open, spacious, and filled with the beautiful qualities of peace, clarity, and compassion. This gentle, persistent energy is applied for a specific reason: to create a mind stable enough for deep observation. This effort is the power source for the lens of our awareness. Having learned how to energize our practice correctly, we now turn to the central pillar of mental discipline, the very heart of the meditative path, and the foundation of all liberating insight, Shan Nirm, or right mindfulness. Having learned to tune the energy of our practice through right effort, we now arrive at the central pillar of mental discipline, the very heart of Buddhist meditation. This is the seventh step of the path, right mindfulness, or samasati. We have learned how to apply our energy not too tight, not too loose. Now we learn where to place it. Right mindfulness is the art and science of paying attention. It is the faculty of awareness that knows what is happening in our experience, as it is happening, in this very moment, without the distorting filters of judgment, commentary, or reaction. It is the simple, yet revolutionary, act of waking up from the dream of our thoughts and arriving fully in our actual lives. For most of our waking hours, we live in a state of mindlessness. We operate on autopilot. We drive a familiar route without any memory of the journey. We eat a meal while scrolling through our phone, not tasting a single bite. Our body is in one place, but our mind is elsewhere, lost in rehashing the past or rehearsing the future. This is the monkey mind, swinging restlessly from one thought branch to another. The anxious storm that descends at 3 in the morning is the ultimate state of mindlessness, a state where we are so completely identified with our thoughts and fears that we believe we are the storm. Right mindfulness is the anchor that allows us to find stillness in the midst of this inner tempest. The Pali word sati carries the connotation of remembering. It is the practice of remembering to come back, remembering to pay attention, remembering to return to the present moment, over and over again. The crucial quality of this awareness is that it is non-judgmental. This is where mindfulness differs radically from our usual mode of self-assessment. Our inner critic is always judging. This is good, that is bad. I shouldn't be feeling this. I need to feel more of that. Mindfulness, by contrast, is like a vast, impartial mirror. It simply reflects whatever comes before it without preference. If anger appears, the mirror reflects anger. If joy appears, the mirror reflects joy. It does not condemn the anger or cling to the joy. It simply knows, this is what is present right now. This kind, receptive, and allowing quality is what makes mindfulness a practice of healing rather than another form of self-criticism. But where do we place this attention? The Buddha provided a comprehensive and systematic map for this practice, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is the field in which we practice. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. We begin here because the body is our most reliable anchor to the now. Our mind can wander to ancient history or far-off galaxies, but our body is always, unequivocally, here in the present moment. The most common and accessible object for this practice is the breath. The breath is always with us, a gentle, rhythmic companion from birth until death. The practice is not to think about the breath, but to directly feel the physical sensations of it. We place our attention at the tip of the nostrils and feel the subtle coolness of the in-breath and the warmth of the out-breath. Or we rest our attention on the abdomen, feeling the gentle rise and fall. When the mind wanders, which it will, we don't scold ourselves. We simply notice, wandering, and gently, kindly guide our attention back to the breath. The breath becomes our home base, our anchor in the storm of thought. This practice extends to all bodily sensations. The feeling of our feet on the ground, the warmth of our hands, the tension in our shoulders. It is the practice of fully inhabiting our physical form. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or more accurately, feeling tones, vedana. Every single moment of our experience, whether it comes through our senses or our mind, has a raw, pre-verbal feeling tone. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Before we even label something good or bad, there is this simple, primal tone. The practice here is to notice this. As you sip your morning coffee, can you notice the pleasantness of the raw sensation? When you hear a loud, jarring noise, can you notice the unpleasantness? When you feel the neutral sensation of your clothes against your skin, can you just note neutral? This is a profoundly subversive practice, because our entire conditioned existence is based on automatically reacting to these tones. We chase and cling to the pleasant, and we resist and push away the unpleasant. This is the engine of tanha, of craving. By mindfully noting pleasant or unpleasant, without launching into the habitual reaction, we create a space. We interrupt the automatic chain of suffering at its very first link. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, or consciousness, citta. Here, we turn our awareness back onto the quality of the mind that is doing the knowing. We learn to recognize the weather of our inner world. We ask, what state is the mind in right now? Is it a mind with greed or a mind without greed? Is it a mind with anger or a mind without anger? Is it scattered or is it focused? Is it contracted or is it spacious? Again, the key is not to judge. We don't say, oh, my mind is so scattered, I am a terrible meditator. We simply and honestly acknowledge, at this moment, the mind is in a scattered state. This practice cultivates a radical and intimate self-awareness, allowing us to see the patterns of our own consciousness with startling clarity. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or dhammas. This is the broadest category, where mindfulness begins to merge with wisdom. Here, we observe the contents of our mind through the clarifying lenses of the Buddhist teachings. We watch thoughts simply as thoughts, not as facts. We observe how the five hindrances, desire, aversion, sloth, restlessness, and doubt arise, how they affect us, and how they pass away. We learn to see our entire experience through the framework of the three characteristics, noticing the impermanence, anicca, of every sensation, the unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, of clinging, and the not-self nature, anatta, of all phenomena. This is where mindfulness becomes a direct tool for liberating insight. Imagine a tightrope walker poised to cross a deep canyon. The wind is blowing, the rope is thin. To successfully make the crossing, where must her attention be? If she looks down into the abyss, she will be overcome with fear and fall. If she focuses too much on the destination, the far platform, she will lose her balance. If she dwells on a wobbly step she took a moment ago, she will falter. Her only hope for survival and success is to place her attention completely and totally in the present moment, to feel the precise pressure of the rope under her foot, to notice the subtle shift of her own weight, to make the constant, tiny adjustments required to maintain her balance, right here, right now. We are all on this tightrope. Life is the rope, and our destination is peace. Mindfulness is the faculty that allows us to find our balance in the only place it can be found, the present moment. One of the most profound gifts of this practice is the creation of a space between stimulus and response. In our normal, mindless state, the gap is non-existent. A stimulus occurs, someone insults you, and a response immediately follows. We lash out in anger. We feel a pang of boredom, and we instantly reach for our phone. We are like puppets, jerked around by the strings of our own conditioning. Mindfulness inserts a sacred pause into this process. The insult comes in. Because we are mindful, we can witness the flash of anger arising in our body as pure sensation, a tightening in the chest, a flush of heat in the face. We can see the angry thought arise in our mind. We can simply watch it all, without being hijacked. In that pause, in that space between the stimulus and our habitual reaction, we find our freedom. For the first time, we have a choice. We are no longer a puppet. We can choose to let the anger pass. We can choose to respond with patience. We can choose to walk away. This space is the beginning of true self-mastery. Right mindfulness, then, is the practice of waking up. It is the kind, patient, and persistent act of returning to the anchor of the present moment, by grounding ourselves in the tangible reality of the body and the breath, and by learning to observe our feelings and mind with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness. We begin to inhabit our lives instead of just thinking about them. This steady, mindful returning, powered by right effort, has a cumulative effect. The mind, once wild and scattered, gradually becomes more stable, unified, and calm. This growing stability prepares us for the culmination of our training in mental discipline, the eighth and final step of the path, Changdirn, or right concentration. The path of mental discipline, or samadhi, began with the wise application of right effort and was anchored in the present moment through the practice of right mindfulness. We have learned to tune our energy and to pay attention. Now we arrive at the beautiful and profound culmination of this inner training, the eighth and final step of the path, right concentration, or samadhi. This is what happens when the mind, gently but persistently held to the present moment by mindfulness, finally lets go of its struggle and comes to rest. If mindfulness is the shepherd continually guiding the wandering mind back to the breath, right concentration is the state that arises when the mind contentedly lies down in the field of the breath, unified, peaceful, and still. The Pali word samadhi literally means to bring together or to establish. It describes a state of one-pointedness, a unification of consciousness on a single object of meditation. The scattered, fragmented energy of the monkey mind coalesces into a single, steady, and luminous beam of awareness. This is not a state of being spaced out or in a trance. On the contrary, the mind in samadhi is exceptionally alert, vibrant, and clear. It is a state of profound inner composure and tranquility. It is vital to distinguish right concentration from the ordinary concentration we all experience in daily life. A skilled surgeon performing a complex operation is highly concentrated. A professional musician lost in a piece of music is concentrated. A child completely absorbed in building with blocks is concentrated. But this is not right concentration. Ordinary concentration can be tense, exclusive, and can even be used for harmful ends. A sniper, after all, requires immense concentration to hit a target. Right concentration is different because of the right. It is concentration that is guided by right view and right intention, supported by right effort, and inextricably fused with right mindfulness. It is a wholesome, peaceful, and liberating state that arises from the ethical and mental training of the entire eightfold path. It is concentration that leads not just to a completed task, but to the end of suffering. Perhaps the most classic and helpful analogy for understanding this process is that of a glass of muddy water. Imagine a glass filled with water, into which a handful of fine dirt and silt has been stirred. The water is now completely opaque, murky, and turbulent. You cannot see through it, and you certainly cannot drink it. This is a perfect image of our ordinary, untrained mind, constantly churned up by the five hindrances. The mud of sensual desire, the murkiness of ill will, the sluggishness of sloth, the turbulence of restlessness and worry, and the cloudiness of doubt make our mind unusable. We cannot see reality clearly through it, and it is not a peaceful or pleasant place to be. What is the solution? How do we clear the water? You do not try to force the mud to the bottom. You do not try to angrily scoop the silt out. Any further agitation will only make the water murkier. The only effective method is to place the glass on a stable, level surface, and then to simply let it be. You leave it completely undisturbed, and then a natural miracle occurs. Slowly, particle by particle, the mud begins to settle. The water at the top starts to clear. Over time, the process continues until the entire glass is filled with crystal clear water, with all the impurities resting harmlessly as a layer of sediment at the bottom. The water has not been changed. Its inherent clarity has simply been revealed. Right concentration is the practice of becoming this still glass. We place the mind upon a single, stable object, most commonly the breath, and we allow it to rest there. We resist the urge to stir it up with more thoughts, plans, and worries. This profound stillness allows the mud of the five hindrances to naturally settle out of the mind stream. What is revealed is the mind's own innate luminosity, clarity, and peace. As the mind settles into deeper and deeper states of this stillness, one can experience what the tradition calls the jhanas. These are states of profound meditative absorption, characterized by powerful bliss, joy, and equanimity. They are not the final goal of the path, but they are deeply healing and transformative experiences, a spiritual sanctuary where the mind can rest, rejuvenate, and gather strength. In the first of these states, the mind is filled with a rapture and happiness born of seclusion from the world of craving and aversion. In the second state, the active thinking process subsides, and the rapture and happiness intensify, born now of pure, unbroken concentration. In the third state, the more energetic quality of rapture fades, leaving a deep, abiding, and full-bodied contentment that permeates one's entire being. And in the fourth state, even this profound contentment subsides, giving way to a state of pure, unshakable equanimity and utter stillness, a mind as calm and clear as a mountain lake on a windless day. The purpose of cultivating such deep states of concentration is twofold. First, it is a profound source of healing and joy. The bliss born of samadhi is so deeply satisfying that it naturally weakens our addiction to the fleeting, unsatisfactory pleasures of the senses. When you discover a source of deep well-being within yourself, the frantic chase for happiness in the outer world begins to lose its appeal. The mind learns that it does not need to get anything from the outside to be happy. Second, and more importantly, a deeply concentrated mind is an incredibly powerful tool for insight. A scattered mind is like a flickering candle in a breeze. Its light is weak and unsteady. A concentrated mind is like a high-powered, stable laser beam. After emerging from a state of deep concentration, the mind is exceptionally sharp, pliable, and clear. When this powerful instrument is then turned toward the investigation of our own experience, it can see through the surface of things and perceive the fundamental nature of reality directly. It can see the ceaseless arising and passing of all phenomena, anicca. It can see the inherent unsatisfactoriness of clinging to anything that changes, dukkha. And it can see the illusory, process-like nature of the self, anatta. This is how right concentration becomes the direct gateway to liberating wisdom. With the cultivation of right concentration, our training in mental discipline is now complete. We have journeyed from the application of wise effort, through the anchoring power of mindfulness, to the profound stillness and clarity of a unified mind. We have learned to calm the waters. We have allowed the mud to settle. We now possess a mind that is both a sanctuary of deep peace and a powerful instrument of penetrating insight. Having established a life of integrity through sila and a mind of serene power through samadhi, we are now perfectly prepared to cultivate the most beautiful and sublime qualities of the human heart. We are ready to grow the most radiant flowers in our inner garden. This next phase of the journey introduces us to the 4 Brahmaviharas, or divine abodes. And it begins with the practice that has the power to melt all anger, resentment, and fear, the boundless and beautiful practice of metta, or loving kindness. We have now traveled far on our inner journey. We have built a foundation of sila, a life of ethical integrity that brings peace. We have cultivated the mind through samadhi, developing a calm, focused, and unified awareness that can see reality with profound clarity. A mind in this state is like a pristine, well-tended garden with fertile soil and gentle sunlight. The question now becomes, what shall we grow here? The Buddhist path is not merely about emptying the mind, but about filling it with the most beautiful qualities of which the human heart is capable. This marks our entry into the practice of the Brahmaviharas, or the divine abodes, 4 sublime states of heart that, when cultivated, lead to a boundless and unshakable peace. We begin with the first and most foundational of these, the radiant practice that has the power to melt anger, dissolve fear, and connect us to the very heart of the world. This is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is a Pali word that is often translated as loving kindness, but its meaning is closer to unconditional friendliness or boundless goodwill. It is crucial to understand what metta is not. It is not the possessive, transactional love of romance or attachment, which says, "I love you because you make me happy," and which can quickly curdle into resentment when our expectations are not met. It is not a mere sentimental feeling that comes and goes with our moods. Metta is an intentional, cultivated, and radical state of heart. It is the steady and sincere wish for all living beings, without any exception, to be safe, to be healthy, to be happy, and to be free from suffering. It is a warm, gentle, benevolent energy that we can learn to generate and radiate from within, a skill that can be developed through meditation, just like focus or clarity. The practice of cultivating metta traditionally follows a beautiful, systematic progression, moving from the easy to the difficult, like ripples spreading out from the center of a pond. And the center, the place where the practice must always begin, is with ourselves. This is often the most difficult step. Many of us find it far easier to wish others well than to offer the same kindness to ourselves. We are steeped in self-criticism, haunted by past mistakes, and convinced of our own unworthiness. But we cannot give to others what we do not possess ourselves. You cannot pour water from an empty well. Therefore, the practice begins by turning the gentle warmth of metta inward. We find a comfortable posture and perhaps place a hand over our heart. We bring an image of ourselves to mind, and we silently repeat simple, heartfelt phrases. Phrases such as, "May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and mind. May I be happy. May I live with ease." At first, this may feel artificial. The inner critic may shout back, "You don't deserve this." The practice is not to fight that voice, but to simply let it be, and to gently, patiently, continue planting these seeds of self-compassion over and over again. Once we have generated even a small spark of warmth for ourselves, we then expand the circle. We bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom we feel effortless love and gratitude. It could be a mentor, a family member, a beloved pet. We hold their image in our mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We allow ourselves to feel the natural welling up of warmth and friendliness that this generates. This stage helps the heart to open in a safe and easy way. Next, we widen the circle again to include a neutral person. This is someone we see in our daily life, but for whom we feel neither like nor dislike: a barista at a coffee shop, a person we pass on the street, a colleague we barely know. We hold this person in our mind's eye and offer them the same sincere wishes. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. This is a powerful stage of the practice, as it begins to break down the walls of indifference that we erect around ourselves. It helps us to see the shared humanity in strangers, to recognize that they, too, are the center of their own universe, wishing for happiness just as we are. Then comes the most challenging, and perhaps most transformative, stage of the practice. Gently and carefully, we bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have a conflict, who has hurt us, or for whom we feel resentment. It is essential to be wise here, starting with someone only mildly irritating, not the greatest enemy of our life. And with as much sincerity as we can muster, we try to extend the phrases of metta to them. It is critical to understand that this is not an act of condoning their harmful behavior. It is not about forcing forgiveness or pretending that what happened was okay. This practice is purely for our own benefit. It is an act of profound self-healing. To hold on to anger and resentment is like holding a burning coal in our own hand, hoping the other person will get burned. The only one we are consistently harming is ourselves. By offering metta to a difficult person, we are making the choice to release ourselves from the prison of our own hatred. We are choosing to put down the burning coal, not for their sake, but for the sake of our own peace. Finally, having worked through these specific stages, we let the heart open completely. We radiate the energy of metta outwards in all directions. Like a sun, we extend it to all beings in our home, our city, our country, and across the entire world. We include all animals, all creatures seen and unseen, large and small. We extend it to friends and enemies, to those we know and those we don't. The wish becomes universal. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. The goal of this practice is the cultivation of a boundless heart, a heart that has dismantled the fences of us and them, and recognizes a fundamental kinship with all of life. This cultivated metta is the direct, prescribed antidote to the poison of anger in all its forms. A mind filled with genuine, warm-hearted friendliness cannot, in the same moment, be filled with hatred or ill will. The light of metta simply dispels the darkness of anger. It also has a powerful effect on fear, Fear arises from a sense of separation, vulnerability, and threat. Metta cultivates a feeling of friendliness and connection, which softens the sharp, contracted state of fear into a more open and courageous warmth. The power of this practice is vividly illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to have him killed by getting an elephant intoxicated with palm wine and setting it loose on the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. The elephant charged, trumpeting in fury, and everyone scattered in terror. The Buddha's loyal attendant, Ananda, tried to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He stood perfectly still, showing no trace of fear. Instead of running or fighting, he looked at the enraged animal and radiated an immense and powerful field of pure, unconditional loving kindness. As the elephant entered this palpable field of metta, it began to slow down. Its enraged trumpeting ceased. Its aggression melted away under the gentle warmth of the Buddha's heart. It walked calmly up to the Buddha, knelt down, and allowed the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The raging elephant is a metaphor for the raging anger, hatred, and fear within our own minds. We cannot conquer these powerful energies with more violence or suppression. We can only tame them with the disarming and transformative power of metta. Loving kindness is a practice that can change our entire orientation to the world. It is the conscious choice to meet each moment and each being with a heart of friendship rather than a mind of judgment or fear. It is the method for dissolving the inner armor that we have built up over a lifetime, an armor that we think protects us, but in reality only isolates us in a prison of our own making. This practice of wishing for the happiness and well-being of all beings is the first of the 4 divine abodes. It opens the heart. But what happens when our open heart encounters not just the potential for happiness in others, but the reality of their pain? What quality allows us to feel with those who suffer without being crushed by their sorrow? This leads us from the radiant sunshine of loving kindness to its essential and tender companion, the deep and heartfelt quality of karuna, or compassion. Having opened the heart with the radiant, sun-like warmth of metta, the unconditional wish for all beings to be happy, we now turn to its essential counterpart. Life, as we have seen, is not only sunshine, it is also shadow. It is filled with pain, loss, sickness, and sorrow. A heart that is truly open cannot simply turn away from this reality. If metta is the heart's response to the potential for happiness, the second divine abode, karuna, or compassion, is the heart's courageous response to the reality of suffering. It is the ability to feel with those who are in pain, and it is the sincere wish for them to be free from that pain. The word karuna is often described in the classical texts as the trembling or quivering of the heart when it comes into contact with suffering. It is a tender, visceral response. It is the feeling that stops you in your tracks when you see an animal that has been injured, or the deep ache you feel in your own chest when a friend tells you of their heartbreak. It is not a thought or an idea. It is a full body and full heart experience of empathy. It is the recognition of our shared vulnerability in the face of life's hardships. It is absolutely crucial to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity looks down from a position of superiority. It says, "Oh, you poor, unfortunate thing. I am so glad I am not in your position." Pity creates distance. It reinforces the separation between me, the fortunate one, and you, the suffering one. It is often a subtle way of reinforcing our own ego. Karuna, on the other hand, arises from a deep sense of equality. It says, "I understand. Your pain is human pain. I know this feeling. We are in this together." Compassion closes the distance. It is born from the recognition that the same potential for sickness, loss, and sorrow that exists in others exists in us as well. It is a connection based on our shared humanity. Furthermore, true compassion is not a state of helpless, sentimental sorrow. It is not simply being overwhelmed by the world's pain. It is an empowered and wise state, supported by the stability and clarity we have cultivated through the rest of the Eightfold Path. It is the union of a tender heart and a clear mind. Like metta, compassion is a quality that can be intentionally cultivated. The practice can begin with ourselves, by offering compassion for our own suffering. For so much of our lives, when we feel pain or make a mistake, we add a second layer of suffering by berating ourselves. The practice of self-compassion is to learn to hold our own dukkha with the same kindness and tenderness that we would offer to a beloved friend who was hurting. We can bring to mind our own struggles and offer the silent phrases, "May I be free from this pain. May I be gentle with myself in this difficulty. May I find peace." From there, we can extend this compassionate wish outwards. We can bring to mind a person we care about who is going through a hard time. We hold them in our heart and silently offer the wish, "May your suffering be eased. May you find the strength to meet these challenges. May you be free." The practice can also involve mindfully contemplating the reality of suffering in the world, not to become morbid or depressed, but to soften the heart's natural tendency to build a wall of indifference. By allowing ourselves to touch the reality of the world's pain, we awaken the heart's innate capacity for a compassionate response. The most poignant story from the Buddha's life that illustrates the birth of true compassion is that of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She was a young mother whose first and only child, an infant son, had died. She was driven mad by grief. Denying the reality of his death, she clutched the tiny body to her chest and ran through her village, frantically begging everyone she met for medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her madness, others looked away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man directed her to the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for the magical medicine. The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with a deep and seeing compassion. He did not offer her a platitude or a false hope. He said to her, "There is only one way to make such medicine. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed, but it must be taken from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a parent, a spouse, or a friend." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed? That would be easy. She began going from door to door. At the first house, a woman answered. "Yes, of course, I will give you a mustard seed," she said. But as she was about to hand it over, Kisa Gotami asked, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Just last year, I lost my husband." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Everyone was willing to give her the seed, but every single family had been touched by death. One had lost a daughter, another a father, another a beloved cousin. As evening fell, she sat exhausted at the edge of the village, watching the flickering lights of the homes. The profound truth of the Buddha's teaching washed over her. Her agonizing, personal grief, "My son is dead, my pain is unbearable," began to dissolve into a vast, universal understanding. She was not alone. This pain of loss was not unique to her. It was the shared, universal inheritance of all human beings. Her heart broke open, not with frantic sorrow, but with a deep, boundless compassion for all beings who must endure this same fate. Her selfish grief had been transformed into selfless compassion. She had seen the first noble truth in her own heart, and it had set her on the path to freedom. This story reveals the very essence of karuna. True compassion is born when we see that our personal suffering is not just personal. It is a reflection of the human condition. This realization moves us beyond self-pity and connects us to the whole of life. In our modern age, with a constant digital stream of tragedies from around the globe, it is easy to become overwhelmed. This is often called compassion fatigue. We feel so much that we eventually shut down and become numb as a form of self-protection. This is why karuna must be balanced by the other factors of the path. Wisdom reminds us that we cannot carry the whole world on our shoulders. Equanimity, the fourth divine abode, which we will explore later, provides the spacious, unshakable container that can hold the pain without being shattered by it. And self-compassion reminds us that we must include ourselves in the circle of care. It is not selfish to step back, to unplug, and to tend to our own well-being. A burned-out helper helps no one. True compassion is wise, balanced, and sustainable. Karuna is the heart's answer to the cry of the world. It is the courageous trembling of a heart that is willing to stay open in the face of pain. It is the force that overcomes our indifference and dissolves our sense of separation. It is the root of all truly altruistic action. With metta, we learn to share in the joy of all beings. With karuna, we learn to share in their sorrow. But what about the moments when others are happy and successful, and we feel not joy, but a pang of jealousy? To cultivate a truly balanced and boundless heart, we must develop the direct antidote to this subtle poison. This brings us to the third of the divine abodes, the radiant and joyful practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Having cultivated a heart that can stay open to both the happiness of others through metta and the suffering of others through karuna, we now arrive at the third of the four divine abodes. This practice is designed to purify the heart of one of the most subtle, corrosive, and pervasive poisons in our modern world, the poison of jealousy and envy. It is the practice of mudita, which can be translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. If metta is the ability to say, "I wish you happiness," and karuna is the ability to say, "I feel with you in your sorrow," mudita is the joyous and wholehearted ability to say, "I celebrate with you in your happiness." It is the genuine, unselfish delight in the good fortune, success, and well-being of others. We live in a culture that is a veritable breeding ground for envy. Our economic systems are built on competition. Our advertising industries thrive on creating a sense of lack. And most powerfully, our social media platforms present us with a constant, curated stream of other people's highlight reels. We scroll through an endless parade of perfect vacations, beautiful weddings, dream job promotions, and talented children. It is almost impossible not to engage in social comparison. And comparison, as the saying goes, is the thief of all joy. When we see another's success, our untrained mind often reacts with a painful contraction. A voice whispers, "Why them and not me? What am I doing wrong? My life is so inadequate in comparison." This feeling is envy, and it is a state of pure dukkha. It is a self-imposed suffering that makes us feel small, resentful, and isolated. It disconnects us from others and traps us in the narrow prison of our own ego. Mudita is the key that unlocks this prison. It is the radical recognition that the happiness of others does not diminish our own. In fact, when practiced, it infinitely expands our opportunities for joy. If we can only be happy when good things happen to us, our chances for happiness are quite limited. But if we can learn to genuinely rejoice when good things happen to anyone or friends, our colleagues, our neighbors, even strangers, then our opportunities for happiness become boundless. The world is suddenly filled with countless sources of joy. Every success story, every moment of good fortune we witness, becomes a direct source of nourishment for our own heart. Mudita is the ultimate win-win emotional state. Like the other heart practices, mudita is a skill that can be cultivated through methodical training. We begin, as always, where it is easiest. Bring to mind a dear friend or a loved one who has recently experienced some success or happiness. Perhaps they received a well-deserved promotion, recovered from an illness, or are simply enjoying a moment of profound peace. Hold them and their good fortune in your mind, and consciously allow your heart to feel happy for them. You can use silent phrases to guide the mind. "I am so happy for you. How wonderful that this has happened. May your happiness and success continue and grow." Notice the feeling of warmth and expansive joy that this generates. This is the seed of mudita. Next, we extend this feeling to a neutral person. Perhaps you hear that a colleague you don't know well has just had a child, or an acquaintance has won an award. The habitual reaction might be one of simple indifference. The practice of mudita is to consciously counter that indifference with the deliberate thought of appreciation. How wonderful for them. I am happy that they are experiencing this joy. This trains the heart to celebrate the good fortune of those outside our immediate circle of attachment, further breaking down the walls of separation. The greatest challenge, of course, is to cultivate mudita for someone whose success triggers our envy or whom we perceive as a rival. This is advanced and delicate work, and it must be approached with great gentleness. When you hear of the success of such a person, the first step is simply to mindfully notice the painful feeling of envy as it arises, the tightening in the chest, the sour taste of resentment. Acknowledge it without judgment. Ah, envy is here. Then, instead of feeding the story of your own lack, you can try to gently shift your perspective. You can acknowledge their hard work and effort. You can recognize that they, like you, are simply trying to find happiness. You don't have to feel ecstatic joy for them. but you can try to replace the active resentment with a simple, neutral wish for their well-being. This is a profound act of letting go of the ego's competitive game. It is choosing the freedom of a peaceful heart over the painful bondage of comparison. Mudita is not just for celebrating external achievements like wealth or status. We can also practice rejoicing in the beautiful qualities we see in others. When you meet someone who is exceptionally kind, patient, or wise, instead of feeling diminished by their goodness, can you feel inspired? Can you celebrate that such qualities exist in the world? Appreciating the virtues of others is a powerful form of mudita that ennobles our own heart and encourages our own development. We can even apply this practice to ourselves. Often, when something good happens in our own lives, we dismiss it or immediately begin to worry about what comes next. The practice of self-mudita is to pause and mindfully acknowledge our own successes, our own moments of good fortune, and our own positive qualities with genuine appreciation and joy, allowing the happiness to truly land. The purest and most natural expression of mudita can be seen in the face of a loving parent watching their child succeed. Imagine a mother watching her toddler take her very first wobbly steps. Her face is not a mask of detached analysis. It is completely lit up with pure, unselfish delight. There is no trace of envy, no thought of, "I wish I could walk for the first time again." The child's joy and triumph are experienced directly as the mother's own joy. The boundary between their happiness has momentarily dissolved. This is the model for a heart perfected in mudita. It is a heart so open and connected that the good fortune of any being is experienced as a personal victory, a cause for celebration. This joyful practice is the definitive antidote to jealousy, one of the most painful and isolating of human emotions. When the mind is filled with appreciative joy, there is no room for envy. One cannot feel both at the same time. Mudita liberates us from the exhausting and endless task of comparing and competing, and invites us into a more spacious and joyful way of relating to the world. It is the practice that allows us to find happiness not just in our own small story, but in the grand, unfolding story of all life. With metta, our heart wishes for happiness. With karuna, our heart trembles with sorrow. And with mudita, our heart dances in joy. With these three sublime practices, our heart has become incredibly dynamic, empathetic, and engaged with the world. It can radiate love, bear witness to suffering, and celebrate success. But such an open and sensitive heart, exposed to the intense joys and sorrows of life, runs the risk of becoming unbalanced, of being tossed about on the waves of powerful emotion. How do we hold all of this, the love, the pain, the joy, with a deep and unshakable calm? How do we keep our compassion from turning into despair, or our joy from turning into giddy attachment? This need for a profound inner balance brings us to the fourth and final divine abode, the great stabilizer and crowning glory of the mature heart, the serene and spacious quality of upekkha, or equanimity. We have now walked through three of the four divine abodes, cultivating a heart that is truly open and engaged with the world. With metta, our heart radiates unconditional friendliness, wishing for the happiness of all. With karuna, it trembles with compassion, wishing for the suffering of all to cease. And with mudita, it dances with appreciative joy, celebrating the success and good fortune of others. This is a heart that is alive, connected, and deeply empathetic. But such a sensitive and open heart, in a world of constant change, faces a great challenge. What happens when our loving kindness is met with anger? What happens when our compassion feels overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the world's pain? What happens when our joy is for someone who then falls into misfortune? An open heart, without a deep-seated stability, can be tossed about like a small boat on a stormy sea. It needs an anchor. It needs a ballast. This brings us to the fourth and final divine abode, the great balancer and crowning glory of these heart practices, the profound and peaceful state of upekkha, or equanimity. Upekkha is perhaps the most misunderstood of these four qualities. The word literally means to look over, suggesting the ability to see things from a high vantage point, with a panoramic perspective, rather than being caught in the turbulent fray down below. It is translated as equanimity, balance, composure, or non-attachment. It is the quality of mind that remains serene and unshaken amidst the unpredictable, ever-shifting tides of life. It is the ability to meet all experiences with a calm and steady heart. The most common misunderstanding is to confuse equanimity with its near enemy, cold indifference. Indifference is a state of shutting down. It says, I don't care, it's not my problem. It is rooted in aversion or delusion. It is a wall we build around our heart to protect ourselves from being hurt. Indifference is a contracted, disconnected state. Upekkha, in stark contrast, is a state of immense openness and connection. It is not born of apathy, but of profound wisdom. Its heart is warm and engaged, but its vision is vast and clear. It does not say, I don't care. It says, I care deeply, but I understand the nature of things. It is the spaciousness of the sky that can hold both the brilliant sunshine and the dark storm clouds without being changed by them. The classic test of equanimity is our ability to remain balanced in the face of what are known as the 8 worldly winds. These are the 4 pairs of opposites that constantly blow through our lives, threatening to throw us off balance. They are pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. An ordinary, untrained mind is like a leaf at the mercy of these winds. When the wind of praise blows, we soar with pride. When the wind of blame blows, we are dashed to the ground in despair. When we experience gain, we are elated. When we experience loss, we are devastated. Our inner peace is completely dependent on external conditions. A mind cultivated in upekkha, however, is like a great mountain. The winds still blow, the storms of life still come, but the mountain remains stable, solid, and unmoved. It experiences the winds without being defined by them. How do we cultivate such a profound state of balance? True equanimity is not something we can force through sheer willpower. It is the natural fruit of deep wisdom, specifically, the clear seeing of 2 fundamental laws of reality, anicca and kamma. When we understand anicca, or impermanence, on a deep level, we see that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame are all fleeting, transient phenomena. They arise, they stay for a while, and they pass away. Seeing this, why would we cling desperately to the pleasant winds or fight furiously against the unpleasant ones? It is like trying to hold the wind in our fist. Wisdom allows us to experience them with a lighter touch, knowing this too shall pass. And when we understand kamma, the law of intentional action, we recognize that all beings are the owners of their own actions and the heirs of their results. We are responsible for the intention and skillfulness of our own actions, but we are not in control of the outcomes or of how other people react. We can act with immense loving kindness, and the other person may still respond with anger. We can offer our compassion, but we cannot take away another's suffering for them. We can do our best work and still receive blame instead of praise. Upekkha is the wisdom that knows where our responsibility begins and ends. It is the peace that comes from doing our best with a pure intention and then letting go of the results. A famous Zen story beautifully illustrates this quality. An old Zen master lived in a small village. One day, a beautiful young woman from the village was found to be pregnant, and in her distress, she named the old master as the father. Her furious parents stormed to the monastery and screamed at him, denouncing him as a hypocrite. The master listened calmly and replied with only 2 words, "Is that so?" His reputation in the village was destroyed. When the child was born, the parents brought the baby and thrust it into his arms, saying, "This is your child, you take care of it." The master accepted the baby, and for the next year, he lovingly cared for it, enduring the scorn of the entire village. A year later, the young mother, overcome with guilt, confessed to her parents that the real father was a young man from the village. The parents were horrified at their mistake. They rushed back to the monastery, bowed low before the master, apologized profusely, and asked for the child back. The master listened calmly, handed them the child, and said only, "Is that so?" The Zen master is the mountain. His inner peace was not dependent on the praise or blame of the villagers. He did not become defensive when blamed, nor did he become elated when exonerated. He was not indifferent, acted with great compassion by caring for the infant, but his heart was free from the turbulent winds of fame and disrepute. This is the unshakable peace of upekkha. This serene quality is also the great guardian of the other 3 divine abodes. It protects them from becoming unbalanced. It protects metta, loving kindness, from degenerating into selfish attachment and grief when a loved one is lost. It protects karuna, compassion, from being overwhelmed by the world's suffering and collapsing into what we call burnout or despair. It protects mudita, sympathetic joy, from becoming agitated excitement or from being disappointed when another's good fortune fades. Equanimity is the vast, loving spaciousness that holds all the other heart qualities, allowing them to function wisely and effectively without overwhelming us. With the cultivation of upekkha, our tour of the 4 divine abodes is complete. We have cultivated a heart that is boundless in its friendliness, tender in its compassion, joyful in its appreciation, and unshakable in its balance. This is the emotional and spiritual maturation that the path makes possible. A mind and heart fortified in this wastable, clear, loving, and balanced ease, now fully equipped to turn its attention to the most subtle, stubborn, and deeply ingrained patterns of negativity that still cloud our consciousness. It is now ready to face the inner demons, not with fear, but with a clear and compassionate wisdom. This brings us to a direct confrontation with the final obstacles to deep concentration and insight, the 5 hindrances. Having journeyed through the trainings in ethical conduct, sila, and cultivated a mind of sublime stability and warmth through mental discipline, samadhi, and the 4 divine abodes, we arrive at a crucial stage of our practice. Our mind is now strong, our heart is open, and our intentions are clear. We are well equipped, and yet, even with this powerful toolkit, we find that the mind can still become clouded. There are times when our concentration wavers, our peace evaporates, and we feel stuck. This is because we must now face, with directness and wisdom, the most common and stubborn obstacles to clarity. The Buddha identified 5 specific patterns of energy that obscure the mind's natural luminosity. These are known as the 5 hindrances. They are not personal failings or signs that we are broken. They are universal inner demons or patterns of mental static that arise in every human mind. The practice now is to learn to recognize them without fear, to understand their nature, and to apply the skillful means to allow them to pass. The Buddha used a brilliant set of similes to describe these hindrances, comparing a mind overcome by them to 5 kinds of unusable water in which a person cannot see their own reflection. As we explore each hindrance, we will use these images to understand their effect on our consciousness. The first hindrance is sensual desire, kamachanda. This is the wanting mind, the pull towards any pleasant sight, sound, smell, taste, or physical sensation. In meditation, this is the mind that wanders off to plan a delicious meal, fantasize about a vacation, or replay a pleasant memory. It is the restless craving for stimulation and pleasure. The Buddha compared a mind caught in sensual desire to a bowl of water mixed with bright, beautiful dyes. The water is alluring, vibrant, red, deep blue, brilliant yellow. It captures our attention completely. But because of the dye, the water is opaque. We cannot see our own reflection. We are so captivated by the object of our desire that we lose all clarity and self-awareness. The antidote to this hindrance is not to hate pleasure, but to see its nature clearly. We can mindfully note the desire as it arises, wanting. We can contemplate its impermanence, recognizing that the pleasure it promises will be fleeting. Or we can simply and gently withdraw our attention from the fantasy and return it to the neutral sensation of the breath, starving the desire of the focus it needs to survive. The second hindrance is ill will or aversion, bhayapada. This is the mind of anger, hatred, resentment, and frustration. It is the push away from anything we find unpleasant. This is the mind that stews over a past argument, nurses a grudge against a colleague, or feels irritation at a sound from outside. It is the energy of conflict and rejection. The Buddha compared a mind consumed by ill will to a pot of water boiling furiously on a fire. The water is turbulent, hot, bubbling, and steamy. It is impossible to see any reflection in such agitated water. Anger completely destroys our peace and clarity. The direct antidote, as we have learned, is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. When a thought of resentment arises, we can intentionally meet it with a thought of goodwill. We can offer kind wishes to the person we are angry with, not for their sake, but to free our own heart from the scalding water of our own anger. By applying the soothing balm of metta, we allow the boiling water to cool and settle. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor, thina metta. This is the heavy, dull, and sleepy mind. It is a state of low energy, encompassing both physical lethargy, thina, and mental fogginess, metta. This is the sinking mind in meditation, the feeling of being wrapped in a thick, heavy blanket. The mind feels sluggish, unworkable, and dim. The Buddha likened this state to a bowl of water completely covered over with a thick mat of algae and water weeds. The light cannot penetrate the dense surface, and it is impossible to see the water below, let alone one's reflection. The antidote here is to arouse energy. We can consciously brighten the mind by changing our posture, standing up to practice, walking meditation, or even gently splashing cool water on our face. We can bring to mind an inspiring teacher or a teaching that fills us with joy. We can investigate the cause. Am I sleep deprived? Am I bored? The key is to cultivate a joyful interest in the practice, an energy that cuts through the fog like a ray of sunlight. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry, uddhaka kukuka. This is the quintessential monkey mind, the agitated and anxious mind. Uddhaka is the restless, scattered energy, the inability to settle on any one thing. Kukucha is the specific flavor of worry, regret, or remorse about things done or left undone in the past. This is the mind that endlessly spins stories, plans, and frets. It is the essence of our 3 a.m. anxiety. The Buddha compared this state to a bowl of water being whipped by a strong wind. The surface is in constant motion, shattered into 1,000 tiny, distorted ripples. Any reflection is broken, fragmented, and impossible to recognize. The antidote to this agitation is to cultivate stillness and grounding. We can bring our attention firmly back to the body, particularly the feeling of our physical weight on the cushion or our feet on the floor. We can focus on the soothing quality of the long out-breath. For the specific worry about past ethical mistakes, the antidote is the cultivation of sila, which leads to the bliss of blamelessness. When our conscience is clear, there is less fuel for the fires of worry and regret. The fifth and final hindrance is skeptical doubt, vichikicha. This is the mind of confusion, indecision, and inner paralysis. It is the voice that whispers, "I can't do this. This is a waste of time. Maybe this whole path is a fraud. How do I know this is working?" This is not the intelligent, questioning doubt that seeks truth, but a cynical, draining doubt that undermines our own efforts and keeps us from committing to the practice. The Buddha's final simile was a bowl of muddy, murky water placed in a completely dark room. Not only is the water itself unclear, but there isn't even any light to see by. It is a state of total obscuration and confusion, where no clear seeing is possible. The antidote is to cultivate a wise and trusting confidence, or saddha. This is not blind faith, but a trust born of experience. We can recall moments when the practice has brought us a sense of peace. We can seek clarity by asking questions of a teacher or reading an inspiring text. But the most powerful antidote is to simply suspend the doubt and commit to the practice with a spirit of empirical investigation. We can say to ourselves, "I will set my doubt aside just for the duration of this one breath. I will simply do the practice and see what happens." When we learn to work skillfully with these 5 hindrances, recognizing them without judgment and applying the appropriate antidote, something remarkable happens. The water clears. The dyes of desire fade. The boiling of anger cools. The algae of sloth dissolves. The ripples of restlessness calm, and the murky darkness of doubt is illuminated. The mind, temporarily free from these hindrances, becomes calm, bright, pliable, and workable. It is in this state of clarity that we can finally see our own reflection, the true nature of our own mind. It is from this clearing that profound insight can arise. These 5 hindrances are not our enemies. They are our teachers. They show us, with perfect precision, exactly where our minds are still stuck, where we are still clinging. And in learning to work with them, we learn the very art of liberation itself. As we become more familiar with this process, we may begin to notice something profound. All 5 of these hindrances seem to revolve around a central character: the I who is desiring, the I who is hating, the I who is feeling lazy, restless, or doubtful. This sense of a solid, independent self seems to be the main protagonist in all of these mental dramas. The next, most radical step on the path of wisdom is to turn the bright, clear, and steady light of our concentrated mind onto this central character, and to ask the most penetrating question of all: what, really, is this self? This investigation leads us to the heart of the Buddha's liberating wisdom, the teaching of anatta, or not, self. Having learned to work skillfully with the 5 hindrances, the specific forms of mental static that cloud our mind, we are now prepared to approach the very root of our suffering. We have seen that all our inner turmoil or craving, our aversion, our anxiety, our pride seems to revolve around a central character, the protagonist of our own inner drama, the I, the me, the self. We spend our entire lives polishing, promoting, and protecting this self. We feel hurt when I am criticized. We feel fear when my existence is threatened. We feel pride when my accomplishments are praised. The Buddha saw that this deep-seated belief in a solid, separate, and permanent self is the most fundamental illusion of all, the central pillar supporting the entire structure of dukkha. His most profound, challenging, and ultimately liberating teaching is a direct investigation into this self. This is the doctrine of anatta, or not self. To be clear, the teaching of anatta does not mean that you do not exist. You are here, reading these words, breathing, thinking, feeling. The teaching is not one of annihilation. Rather, it states that we do not exist as a separate, independent, and unchanging entity or soul. There is no permanent, monolithic CEO in the head office of our mind, body complex. There is no unchanging core that is the real you. What we conventionally call a self is in reality a dynamic, interdependent, and constantly changing process. The shift in understanding is from seeing the self as a noun to seeing it as a verb. We are not a thing, we are a happening. Why is this so important? Because the belief in a solid self, a view called Sakaya Ditti in Pali, is the taproot of our suffering. When we believe we are a fixed entity, we create a fortress that must be defended at all costs. Every criticism becomes a personal attack. Every loss becomes a diminishing of me. Every pleasure must be grasped to enhance me. The fear of death becomes the terrifying prospect of the absolute annihilation of this precious me. The entire project of the ego is built on this illusion, and it is an exhausting, stressful, and ultimately doomed project. The teaching of anatta is the invitation to lay down this heavy burden. To make this practical, the Buddha systematically deconstructed what we call a person into 5 distinct processes, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. He invites us to look for a self in each of these, and to see if we can find one. The first aggregate is form, rupa. This is our physical body in the entire material world. Look at your body. Is this you? This body is in a constant state of flux. It is aging, changing, and composed entirely of non-you elements. The food you ate, the water you drank, the air you are breathing. It is impermanent and dependent on countless outside conditions. Therefore, this changing form cannot be your permanent, unchanging self. The second aggregate is feeling, vedana. These are the raw feeling tones of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral that arise with every moment of experience. Are you your feelings? Clearly not. Feelings are like the weather, they come and go with unpredictable speed. One moment there is joy, the next sorrow, the next boredom. If you were your feelings, your identity would shift from moment to moment. You are the one who experiences feelings, but you are not the feelings themselves. The third aggregate is perception, sanya. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels. It sees a shape and says tree. It hears a sound and says car. It feels a sensation and says pain. Are you your perceptions? These perceptions are conditioned by our language, our culture, and our past experiences. They are often faulty. 2 people can perceive the exact same event in completely different ways. These conditioned and unreliable perceptions cannot be a stable, core self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, sankhara. This is a broad category that includes all of our volitional activities, our thoughts, intentions, opinions, beliefs, moods, habits, and biases. This is the stuff of our mind. Are you your thoughts? We have seen that thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. They arise and cease, often without our conscious control. To identify with our thoughts is to be a slave to every passing whim and worry. These ephemeral mental events cannot be the real you. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, vijnana. This is the raw faculty of knowing, the awareness that arises when a sense organ meets a sense object. There is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness, and so on. This might seem like the final candidate for a self or soul, but the Buddha pointed out that consciousness is not a singular, continuous thing. It is utterly dependent on conditions. Eye consciousness cannot arise without an eye and a form to see. It flickers in and out of existence with incredible speed, arising with each new object of awareness. This dependent, flickering consciousness cannot be a permanent, independent self. After this exhaustive analysis, the question remains, where is the self? We have taken the engine apart, piece by piece, and we cannot find the driver. The profound conclusion is that there isn't one. The self is a convenient label we apply to the dynamic interaction of these five processes, just as we apply the label river to the constantly moving flow of water. A brilliant dialogue between the Buddhist sage Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda illustrates this perfectly. The king, a sharp intellectual, challenged Nagasena on this very point. If there is no permanent person, he argued, then who are you? Nagasena replied by asking the king about the chariot he had arrived in. Is the chariot the wheels? He asked. No, said the king. Is it the axle, the frame, the reins? To each question, the king answered no. Nagasena then asked, then is the chariot all of these parts combined? No, venerable sir, the king admitted. Nagasena concluded, then what, your majesty, is this chariot? The king was forced to concede that chariot is simply a conventional name, a designation given to a collection of parts, properly assembled. Nagasena smiled. Exactly so, your majesty. Just as chariot is a designation for the assembled parts, Nagasena is a designation for the assembled five aggregates. In the ultimate sense, no static, independent entity can be found. This teaching can initially sound frightening, as if it is advocating for our own annihilation. But this is a grave misunderstanding. We are not destroying anything real. We are merely awakening from a painful dream. The belief in a separate self is a heavy burden. It's like carrying a heavy backpack filled with all our pride, insecurities, fears, and ambitions. We spend all our energy defending it and polishing it. The realization of anatta is the profound relief of setting this heavy backpack down. The energy once spent on ego defense is now liberated for compassion, for connection, for joy. When there is no me to be offended, criticism becomes mere sound. When there is no me to aggrandize, the success of others can be a source of genuine joy. The terror of death is eased, because we see that what we call our life is simply a process of transformation that has always been happening and will continue to happen. The illusion of a hard boundary between self and other dissolves, leading to a deep and abiding sense of connection with all of life. The wisdom of anatta is the ultimate antidote to the isolation and fear that haunt the human heart. It is the realization that we are not a solid, lonely noun, but a flowing, interconnected verb. This insight does not lead to a cold, nihilistic void, but to a warm, spacious, and liberated way of being. This profound understanding of the not-self nature of our own being naturally leads to an even more expansive view. If I am a process of interconnected conditions, what about everything else? What about the world itself? This next step, expanding the principle of not-self to all of reality, brings us to the very heart of Mahayana philosophy and the great liberating view of shunyata, or emptiness. Having taken the courageous step of deconstructing the seemingly solid self and discovering it to be an ever-changing process, we now stand at the precipice of the Buddha's most expansive and liberating view. The wisdom of anatta, or not-self, has shown us that the I at the center of our universe is empty of any permanent, independent essence. The natural question that follows is, if this is true of me, what is true of everything else? What about the world that this not-self perceives? This inquiry broadens our focus from the internal landscape of the mind to the very nature of existence itself. It leads us to the great unifying teaching of Mahayana Buddhism, the profound wisdom of shunyata, or emptiness. The word emptiness can be deeply misleading. Upon hearing it, our Western minds may immediately conjure images of a cold, nihilistic void, a bleak nothingness where nothing matters. This is the absolute opposite of what shunyata means. Emptiness is not a negation of life. It is a profound affirmation of its true nature. When the teaching says that all things are empty, it does not mean they do not exist. It means they are empty of a separate, independent, self-contained existence. Nothing in the entire cosmos exists on its own, from its own side. Everything comes into being only in profound, intricate relationship with everything else. Paradoxically, to be empty of a separate self is to be full of the entire universe. This is the teaching of radical interconnectedness. The great contemporary Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful contemplation to make this clear. Look closely at a single sheet of paper. If we ask what it is, we might say it is wood pulp. But where did the wood pulp come from? It came from a tree. So, the tree is in the paper. But the tree could not exist without the sun that nourished it, the clouds that gave it rain, and the earth that gave it minerals. So, the sun, the cloud, and the earth are also here in this sheet of paper. And what about the logger who cut down the tree? He is here too. And for the logger to live, he needed to eat. So the wheat field that produced his bread and the farmer who grew the wheat are also in the paper. And the logger's parents are in the paper. And the person who made the saw to cut the tree is in the paper. If we continue to look in this way, we will see that there is nothing in the entire cosmos that is not in this single sheet of paper. It is empty of a separate, solitary existence. It can only exist because everything else exists. Its entire being is a web of connections. To be, the master said, is to interbe. This is the meaning of emptiness. It is not that the paper does not exist. It is that it interexists with all that is. The chair you are sitting on, the sound you are hearing, your very own body, none of these things have a hard, fixed boundary around them. They are all temporary gatherings of conditions, woven into the seamless fabric of reality. To understand how this liberates the heart, we can turn to the beautiful analogy of the wave and the ocean. Imagine a single wave on the vast sea. The wave has a distinct identity. It has a beginning as it rises from the water, a middle as it crests, and an end as it crashes on the shore. It has a particular height, a shape, a speed. It can be compared to other waves. It might feel proud to be a large wave or envious of an even larger one. And most of all, the wave lives in constant terror of its own death, the moment it will dissolve into foam on the sand. This is the perspective of the separate self, the ego. It sees itself as a distinct, vulnerable entity, defined by its form and terrified of its own dissolution. But what is the wave's ultimate nature? Is it waveness, number? Its fundamental reality is water. The wave was never, for a single moment, separate from the ocean. Its birth was simply the ocean rising up, and its death is simply the ocean settling back into itself. When the wave has the profound insight, I am not just this temporary form. My true nature is the entire ocean. Everything changes. The fear of death vanishes. Why? Because the ocean cannot die. The wave can now delight in its life as a unique expression of the ocean. It can dance in the sunlight, feel the power of the wind, and rush toward the shore all without the underlying terror of annihilation. It knows that its form will change, but its essence is eternal and boundless. The teaching of Shunyata is the invitation for us, the individual waves, to realize our true nature as the ocean. The realization of anatta was seeing that our waveness is an illusion. The realization of emptiness is seeing that our true nature is the entire ocean of existence. This insight dissolves the deepest existential fears that haunt us. Furthermore, this great wisdom gives birth to the most profound compassion. This is the ultimate fruition of the path. If all things are interconnected, if the boundary between self and other is a conceptual illusion, then the very idea of us versus them dissolves. Harming another being is no longer an abstract ethical problem. It becomes a direct act of self-harm. Their suffering is not separate from my suffering. It is a disturbance in the single web of interbeing to which we both belong. When this is seen clearly, compassion mahakaruna, or great compassion arises not as a contrived sentiment, but as the most natural, logical, and heartfelt response to reality. Wisdom and compassion are revealed to be two wings of the same bird. One cannot fly without the other. The clear seeing of our interconnectedness is wisdom. The heart's response to that interconnectedness is compassion. The understanding of emptiness is the ultimate antidote to all forms of clinging. We can no longer cling to a self that we know is a process. We can no longer cling to possessions, relationships, or statuses, because we see they are all impermanent and dependently arisen, like the sheet of paper. We can no longer cling to rigid views or ideologies, because we see that all concepts are just provisional labels for a fluid and ungraspable reality. This is the great freedom, the release from the prison of our own fixed ideas and attachments. It is not a cold and empty void. It is a warm, vibrant, and sacred reality. A seamless dance of interdependence where everything is intimately connected to everything else. We have now traveled from the very practical ethics of daily life to the highest and most sublime view of the nature of reality. We have journeyed to the summit of the mountain of wisdom, and the view from here is vast, open, and boundless. But we do not live on the mountaintop. We live in the valley. The final and most crucial challenge of the path is to learn how to bring this expansive, liberating view back down into our everyday lives. How do we embody this wisdom while washing the dishes, driving in traffic, and interacting with our families? How do we live the truth of emptiness in a world of solid-seeming forms? This vital question of putting wisdom into action brings us to the final part of our exploration, the great art of integration. We have traveled to the highest peaks of wisdom, gazing upon the vast, interconnected landscape of reality through the eyes of anatta and shunyata. We have seen that the separate self is a fleeting process, and that all phenomena are empty of any solid, independent existence, woven together in a seamless web of interbeing. The view from this mountaintop is breathtaking, liberating, and profoundly peaceful. But we do not live on the mountaintop. We live in the valley, with its traffic jams, its deadlines, its family arguments, and its daily chores. The final, most essential, and perhaps most challenging part of our journey is to learn how to carry the wisdom of the mountain down into the marketplace. How do we integrate these profound truths into the messy, beautiful, ordinary moments of our lives? This is the art of integration. There is a common misconception that the spiritual path is a form of escape. We imagine a meditator sitting peacefully on a cushion in a quiet room, blissfully removed from the troubles of the world. And while periods of quiet retreat are invaluable for training the mind, the ultimate purpose is not to build a permanent refuge from life, but to cultivate a mind that is a reliable refuge in life. The world is not an obstacle to our practice. The world is the practice itself. Our jobs, our relationships, our challenges, these are the very arenas in which our wisdom and compassion are forged and tested. The goal is not to create a peaceful life, but to find the peace within any kind of life. We aim to bring the dawn inside, so that its light can illuminate even the darkest and most chaotic days. This integration is practiced through what can be called meditation in action. It is the art of bringing the same quality of mindful, present moment awareness that we cultivate on the cushion into every activity of our day. The formal sitting practice is the gymnasium, where we strengthen the muscle of mindfulness. Daily life is the field where we use that strength. We can begin with the simplest of acts. Consider the act of eating. So often, we eat on autopilot, our minds 1,000 miles away, barely tasting our food. Mindful eating is an act of integration. It is feeling the weight of the fork in our hand, seeing the colors and textures on the plate, smelling the aromas, and consciously tasting each bite. It is reflecting, as we chew, on the interconnected reality of the food, the sun, the rain, the earth, the farmer, the truck driver, all the non-food elements that are present in that single bite. Just like in our sheet of paper, we can practice mindful walking as we move from our car to our office. Instead of being lost in thought, we can feel the sensation of our feet making contact with the ground, the pressure, the texture, the movement. Each step becomes an anchor to the present moment. In our relationships, we can practice mindful listening. When a loved one or a colleague is speaking, are we truly hearing them, Or are we just waiting for our turn to talk, already formulating our response, our defense, our next point? To offer someone the gift of our full, non-judgmental presence is a profound act of compassion and integration. It is bringing the stillness of the concentrated mind into human connection. This is how we integrate mindfulness. But how do we integrate the deeper wisdom of not self and emptiness? We apply these views as a new lens through which to see our daily struggles. Consider a moment of conflict. Someone criticizes you, and you feel that familiar, hot flare-up of defensiveness and hurt. The untrained mind reacts from the belief in a solid self. I have been attacked. My ego is bruised. I must defend myself. But a mind trained in the wisdom of anatta can see this differently. It can witness the feeling of hurt arise as an impersonal sensation in the body. It can see the critical words as simply the other person's expression of their own views and their own suffering. There is no solid me to be attacked. In the space that this wisdom creates, we are free from the need to react. We can instead choose to respond with clarity, compassion, or even silence. Consider a moment of overwhelming stress at work. A huge project looms, seemingly a single, terrifying monster. The wisdom of Shunyata allows us to deconstruct this monster. We can see that the project is empty of a solid, monolithic existence. It is simply a collection of interdependent parts. A series of emails, a list of tasks, a set of deadlines, the expectations of various people. By seeing its empty, composite nature, it becomes less intimidating. We can then deal with it skillfully, one part at a time, without being crushed by the imagined weight of the whole. A beloved Zen story perfectly encapsulates this spirit of integration. A young seeker approaches a wise old Zen master and asks, "Master, what was your life like before you attained enlightenment?" The master replies, "Before enlightenment, I chopped wood and I carried water." The seeker, intrigued, then asks, "And what is your life like now, after you have attained enlightenment?" The master smiles and replies, "After enlightenment, I chop wood and I carry water." The seeker is confused. Then what is the difference? What has changed? The master looks at him with deep clarity. "The difference is this. Before enlightenment, when I was chopping wood, my mind was thinking about carrying water. And when I was carrying water, my mind was busy planning the evening meal. Now, when I chop wood, I just chop wood. When I carry water, I just carry water." This is the essence of an integrated spiritual life. The outer circumstances may not change. There is still wood to be chopped and water to be carried. There are still bills to be paid, meals to be cooked, and challenges to be met. The transformation is not in the what of our lives, but in the how. It is the quality of mind we bring to each ordinary moment. The goal is not to float above life, but to be fully present for it, to meet it with an open heart and a clear mind. The sacred is not found in some distant, heavenly realm. It is found here, in the simple, profound act of chopping wood and carrying water with our whole being. The peace we may find in the deep silence of a midnight meditation is our training. It is where we temper our tools. But the real test, the true expression of our practice, is in the chaotic, unpredictable, and brilliant light of our everyday. We bring the dawn inside ourselves, not so we can hide in its light, but so that our inner radiance can illuminate the world we walk through. Having journeyed from the depths of our midnight anxiety, through the great ethical, mental, and wisdom trainings of the path, and back to the practical reality of our daily lives, we now arrive at the end of our detailed exploration. It is time to step back, to reflect on the entirety of this transformative journey, and to gather the essential wisdom we can carry forward in our hearts. We began our journey together in the deep, quiet hours of the night, in that solitary space at 3 in the morning, where the world is still, but the mind is a raging storm. We began as a prisoner of that storm, tossed about by the winds of anxiety, regret, and fear. We have traveled far since then. We have walked a path that is thousands of years old, a path of profound self-discovery and healing. We looked honestly at the nature of our own unease, the universal truth of dukkha. We found its source not in the world outside, but in the feverish thirst of craving, tanha, within our own hearts. And most importantly, we discovered the promise of an end to this fever, the possibility of a peaceful shore. Nirodha. We built a raft, piece by piece, from the sturdy lumber of the Eightfold Path. We learned to live with integrity through right action, right speech, and right livelihood. We trained the mind to be steady and clear through right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. We cultivated a heart that is vast and warm through loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and finally, the great, unshakable balance of equanimity. And with this clear mind and open heart, we looked into the very nature of our own being and found not a solid, separate self to defend, but a wondrous, flowing, interconnected process. The lonely prisoner we met at the beginning of our journey has realized that the prison walls were an illusion and that they were never separate from the whole of life. The ultimate message of this entire journey is this: peace is not a destination you arrive at when all your problems are solved. It is not the absence of noise, chaos, or difficulty. It is a quality of mind. It is an inner refuge that you build, breath by breath, choice by choice. It is the skill of being the calm, spacious sky that can hold all the weather of your life, the sunshine, the clouds, the storms without being damaged by it. The midnight Zen, that quiet clarity we seek in the darkness, is not something that belongs only to the night. It is a portable sanctuary. It is a state of being you learn to carry within you, bringing the stillness of the midnight mind into the brilliant, chaotic light of day. You do not need to become someone else to find this peace. You do not need to acquire anything you do not already have. The potential for boundless wisdom and unshakable compassion is your very nature. It is the clear water that is always present beneath the mud of the hindrances. This path is simply the gentle, patient process of allowing the mud to settle. This is not a journey with a final destination, but a continuous practice of returning, of beginning again in each and every moment. So the next time you find yourself awake in the deep of the night, may you meet that moment not with fear, but with a gentle friendliness. The profound silence of the world is no longer a source of dread, but an invitation. For perhaps this midnight awakening is not an affliction. Perhaps it is a grace. It is the quiet, sacred time when you can most clearly hear the whisper of your own deepest wisdom, calling you home.